Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Environmental Protection Commission special meeting and a public hearing, which is going to be continued. It's Wednesday, May 17, 2023. This is an in-person meeting. Okay, special meeting, new business. ETC 14-2023, 16 Hamilton Lane, T. Havoc and K. Havoc, to install a fence in and within close proximity to the wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. The property lies along the south side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 780 feet west of Brookside Road, and it's identified as map 10, lot 23. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.058 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, we're here this evening. The application has made it on its way onto the agenda for acceptance, meaning that it's the start of the process, it marks the start of the review process, and it gives the board the opportunity to decide, one, if it requires a public hearing, and two, if anybody had the opportunity to start to look through the materials, if they had any initial comments that can be incorporated into a staff request for information or staff's initial review.
Okay. On this one and the next one is, I'd like to know the fence they're putting in. What, I mean, is it, because I've seen deer fence that have 2 inches by 4 inches across wire. I've seen a deer fence that is basically an inch, holes that have an inch. And, could be a chain link fence. I'd like to see what sort of fence is being proposed. Okay, the other thing I worry about is what I've called in the past euphemistically, the Bill Wright critters. Okay, the ones that, that go underneath the fence and things like that. So, I'm not sure what the applicant has there, but, when you extend for information, okay? Does anybody else have anything that they would like to? Oh, yes, alternatives. Alternatives to, because this is going in the wetland, and, I mean, in the wetland, okay? And so, I'd like to explore alternatives that avoid the direct wetland. Okay, I understand the upland review, right, but, I mean, for the record, I grew up at 21 Hamilton Lane, and so literally from birth to going to college, so I know these properties extraordinarily well. And basically, Hamilton Lane is a wetland and is was built up. So that's why I'm interested in understanding if there's alternatives here.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think the term deer fence is, to me, it's a meaningless term, and in this application, it's interesting. They say that we want to install a deer fence, but then they say the purpose is for the safety of our small children. So getting the type of construction of the fence, as the chairman just mentioned, what the type of fence is, construction, what it looks like, et cetera, that makes much more of a definition to me than deer fence. So I would just recommend that for all future applications.
Just one quick question. Is there a reason why it has to be in the wetland and not in the upland review area, or does that completely defeat the purpose of the fence?
Well, I think that's part of, that's an excellent question, and we'll direct Rick to find out from the applicant to get prudent and feasible alternatives. Okay, because
no, I understood that was the point you were making.
Yes.
My question was, is if the fence goes into the wetlands, then the area of which it fences in is larger than if you abide by the meets and bounds of the upland review area, by which one would say maybe it doesn't make sense to have a fence, and
sure.
that's why the fence wants to be in the wetland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I'll continue Peter's point. A deer fence is typically 6 to 8 feet high. Okay, not sure what the applicant is proposing, but if it's going to be for coyotes and bobcats, I think were mentioned. So, no, not being a bobcat expert, I'm not sure how much they can jump, but it has a different purpose than deer. Okay, then it doesn't, a 4-foot fence to a deer is stepping over nothing. Okay, so, for these other animals, so we need better definition there.
I mean, the lots are extensively wetlands and floodplain, and there's a water course that runs through, and it generally parallels the rear property boundary, except on one of the lots, it kind of takes a little bit of the corner off. So the process will be right now they're seeking to do the entire parcel, the rear properties and the side property boundaries. But these are good questions. Is there an alternative that better protects the water course, better protects wetlands? What type of fence is it? How it reacts with, things that they're seeking to keep out? And again, those are very good questions, and that'll be part of what they're asked to address.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, and I'm wrestling with the question because I think it's way outside the purview of this commission. But do we care that these, what appear to be 2 adjoining properties, have matching fence? So there's a neighborhood consistency as they go along? And interesting.
That's an excellent point. I hadn't thought about it, but I don't know.
I've seen
What-
situations through town where you have a stockade fence here and a split rail here and then some other kind of white fence that's very colonial right next to it, and it kind of
Yeah, right next to each other.
looks like a jungle, but I don't know that we can.
Yeah.
We can't mandate that, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Right.
It's purposeful for the wetlands and it's the most protected.
We can suggest that the neighbors talk.
That's why I was
Okay.
uncomfortable with asking the question, but I asked it.
I think with one of the residences, they were planning to do more of a traditional deer type fence in the back, and then as it came to the front, it would be like a white vinyl type fence, but I don't remember the other one.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
But I think also it would be important to know if the fences require any regrading and or removal of trees.
Excellent point.
Next.
Okay. EPC 15/20/23, 14 Hamilton Lane, M. Leicester and Leicester, to install a fence in close to the proximity of the two wetlands, water courses, and special flood hazard areas. Property lies along the south side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 670 feet west of Brookside Road, and is identified as map number 10, lot number 22. The zone is R1 and is approximately 1.128 acres. I think all of our comments apply that we just did.
Again,
apply-
it's to acknowledge, it's to
Okay,
acknowledge
we have to
receipt,
acknowledge receipt, yeah, okay,
and that's same parameters apply to this one.
yep. Anybody else have anything specific for this?
No.
Okay, EPC 16-2023, 26 Beach Lane, S. Rich and D. Rich, to construct residential additions within special flood hazard area and proximate to Holly Pond. The property lies along the west side of Beach Road, approximately 1,245 feet south of the Boston Post Road, and is identified as map number 53, lot number 9. The zone is R1/2, and it is approximately 0.311 acres.
Mr. Chairman, this is an application to do residential additions adjoining to Holly Pond. The application has made its way onto the agenda tonight. We submitted the basic information and initiating the time clock, which started the review process and initiating the time clock for the review of the applications of this sort to determine and for allow the commission to decide if a public hearing is warranted for this particular application. I've been to the site and we'll be generating a list of information. If you have any preliminary comments based on your review of the plans or your inspections, please let me know.
Commission members? Bill? Your area. Okay. You have no specific questions?
Initially.
Okay? Moving on, EPC 17-2023, 10 Holly Lane, B Chase and D Chase.
No.
To construct pool, spa, deck, and other related features in a special flood hazard area and proximate to wetlands and water courses. The property lies along the west side of Holly Lane, approximately 700 feet north of Middlesex Road, and is identified as map number 9, lot number 150. The zone is R1 and is approximately 1.19 acres.
Last item out for acceptance in the application is this application to construct a pool and deck and related features on the properties, which wetlands and water courses and special flood hazard areas. This particular property had been the subject of a prior EPV application when it was initially constructed. Again, has made its way onto the agenda to start the statutory time clock, and determination if a public hearing is, in your opinion, warranted for the conditions outlined in the regulations, and if you have any initial comments based on your review of what has been submitted to date.
Commission members?
I did like quick a note to Rick, because it seems like a very, very, very large lawn back there. I know in 2019, so I was asking him if he maybe get a chance to research what was allowed as far as lawn buildup during that permit application and acceptance. There are also some large rock borderlines that are way back there as well. And if it was all acceptable then that's the way it is, and we'll work from that. But just want to make sure that it was on top, that was correctly done. Because it probably was graded and filled to make that area nice, a big lawn like it is. So that was one that Rick hopefully can look into. And the other one is, it seemed like there's a shared border on the grass. We talked about that with kind of right across next door, across the stream last time, to make sure that there was some kind of berm between their fertilized grass area going into that stream. And there was some planting, but it was definitely not enough to stop on either side. So I don't know who cuts what lawn, but the applicant today is probably cutting the lawn that it's really belongs to the other side. We made sure in that last applicant that everybody put some protection to that stream, and that has not happened. So we'll have to figure out how that's all going to play out.
Okay. Rick, you got that?
Yep.
No comments or questions from me?
Jim, anything?
I'll coattail on Bill's good observation. Nothing further. Eric.
Okay. I'll go with Tim Holly. Across the street is the beginning of coming down from the high school. The water comes down past the athletic fields and goes into this part of Holly Lane. I mean, you and I used to run track there. So across the street is a major wetland. Okay, and so I just want to be sure that that is protected. Okay, so we got to make sure that the whatever coal tax, et cetera, is being used there is we're not going to have any runoff there, because that's a particularly one that's close to my park there, that wetland there. So
That's the one that came before this commission a year or so ago?
we've had a bunch there, but we've had a bunch along there.
Yeah.
And there was one house there that had 3 sump pumps working 7/24.
Whoa.
And so and so this was the case of adding groundwater to a swamp. Okay, so it was making it more swampy, and that's not that's not good either. Okay, it was an unusual case like that. So what I want to do is make sure that we don't compound that going forward with this. So,
Yeah, no questions.
Carolyn?
No, I don't have any questions right now.
I was interested in understanding why they chose the rain garden in a little bit more detail.
Can I ask her a question? Is that okay?
Sure, Rick, are we gonna permit somebody from the,
I'm just sure,
look, you don't have to answer tonight, okay? You know, Alexander, he's just taking notes, and the formal presentation, et cetera, will be next meeting. And so you'll be, this is just adding to Rick's questions that he'll be asking the applicant. So Alexander, so it's not a, you don't have to come up with it on the fly, if you will.
And then I just have a recommendation on changing the language to make it a little more strong. It's a pet peeve of mine, so instead of like, we recommend that you do this maintenance, we require you to do this maintenance, and periodically it could be like, changed to 4 times a year, or whatever that may be.
the detail, the maintenance responsibilities and period, right?
Yeah.
I have one more.
Sure.
If I can throw that back in. On the wetland buffer restoration plan, it would be great to put in where those boulders are today, to give me a source of reference based on, where this piece really lays out. So they're very large boulders. If they just placed them in there currently today, it would give me an idea. Is it really underneath the overhang of the trees? Is it further out in the yard? And then physically seeing the spot, I would know what we're talking about off this.
Okay.
An administrative item, Rick, regarding this application, I don't, because I'm looking through here, is there's a document, I think this is what the town does, is there's categories of which the applicants, consultants upload documents to. So if I read something for this application that says detailed surface runoff sedimentation and erosion control plans, paren, narrative, and graphic, I would interpret that as the engineer's site plan. So when I click on that, and I go to view it, I see page 2 of Wayne Devanzo's cross sections of the Coltech or the anti-tracking pad, but I don't see his engineering plan.
Yeah, on page 1, so it's just misloaded.
But are you sure it's misloaded, or is it
No. If there's-
something? Okay,
There's a
Alexandra.
sediment
Well,
erosion.
the problem is that it's asking for the plan, and if you have 2 sheets of the plan, so there's the plan and then the details, you can upload this under the one. You have to upload the second sheet somewhere else. So that's why I just was looking for another space where I could upload the rest of the site design. So for some reason, if you have those sheets saved separately, you can upload them under one plan.
Okay, Rick, that has to be straightened out then. The uploading,
That sounds
Dr.
like
Greer.
That's exactly it. The town has to make it convenient for an applicant to submit their needed documents.
It's a state system, but.
Yeah, and sorry to make this the semantical question. So these documents are uploaded as PDF files. So if I regularly use AutoCAD, so if I'm in AutoCAD and I print my plans to PDF, whether it's one page or, I see documents up here that are multiple pages. So I don't understand, if I'm uploading the engineer's site plan, why it can't be,
Multiple pages.
yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't think,
Yeah, there must have been a problem uploading it. That's what I suspect. I mean, this is a new system for all of us.
right, and then
So
sorry.
what has to happen between now and then is, Rick will take a look at it, figure out what's going on, talk to Alexander in this case, or Wayne Devanzo, to say, hey, listen, this has to be reloaded. Okay, because it's clearly not complete now. If we're missing page 1 and don't have page 2, or if we have page 2 and missing page 1, it's incomplete.
Right, so overstate the obvious. I think what I'm saying is, and I'm confirming as we're reading it now, is the application is incomplete because I don't see the engineer's map,
Okay?
but his cross-section came up. So before
Okay.
an
But I
applicant.
think it's loaded elsewhere in the list of things.
Okay,
All
Right,
You have fun.
I made my point.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, moving on to old business. EPC 28-2022, 8 Rainbow Circle, MRIP to install 120-gallon above-ground propane tank, copper line, and other related features within a special flood hazard area and within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Rainbow Circle, approximately 350 feet north of Tokenique Road, and is identified as map number 37, lot 18C. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.5923 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this application has been withdrawn, so no further action is necessary. This is
Rick.
just a housekeeping.
Okay, next one, EPC 27-2022, 15 Holly Lane. M. Pedley to install a generator and related features within close proximity to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Holly Lane, approximately 1,620 feet east of Norotan Avenue, and is identified as map number 9, lot number 145. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.1218 acres.
Same matter, the application has been withdrawn, no further action is necessary.
Okay. EPC 6-2023, 2 Tanglewood Trail, C. KES model, to construct an in-ground pool, patios, drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the south side of Tanglewood Trail, just west of Roquetan Road, and is identified as map 18, lot 29. Zone is R1 half, and it is approximately 0.601 acres.
Same, Mr. Chairman, this application has been withdrawn as well. No further action is necessary.
Okay. The next item of business is EPC 8-2023, 59 Brookside Drive, T. Sergeant and A. Sergeant. To demolish existing accessory structures, construct a residential addition, grade, and landscape proximate to wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. Property lies along the east side of Brookside Drive, approximately 975 feet north of Anthony Lane, and is identified as map number 47, lot 5. The zone is R1/5, and it is approximately 9,797 square feet.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, in the prior months, well, it was in the month of March 1st and March 29th, the EPC considered the permit application, solicited information to assess what the impacts of the proposed activities would be, and upon the completion of testimony, the board, or the commission, had directed staff to generate a draft resolution for their consideration, noting that the application had touched upon or sufficiently addressed each of the concerns and issues that had been raised during the review process.
Mm-hmm. Did everybody get a copy of that resolution?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Jim, can I have a motion to approve?
I'm pleased to make a motion to approve the resolution, the conditional approval letter for EPC number 8, 2023, with respect to 59 Brookside Drive.
Peter,
I'd like to second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item of business is EPC 11-2023, 23 Greenleaf Avenue. D. Pesley and A. Pesley to construct a new family dwelling, drive, utilities, drainage, pool, and other related features proximate to wetlands and watercourses. Parcel lies along the north side of Greenleaf Avenue, approximately 670 feet west of Hollow Tree Ridge Road, and is identified as map number 28, lot number 7. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 4.14 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the application had been accepted at last month's meeting. We started the statutory time clock, and staff, with your input, had generated a list of information, and information had been generated and returned to the office for this meeting and for a presentation on the matter. It is to demolish the existing dwelling and to construct a new dwelling, parking court, pool patio, and other related features proximate to the wetlands and water courses that are on the site. The wetlands and water courses are generally along
East.
the east, thank you, along the eastern portions of the property, and there's also a pocket of wetland that is kind of like right in the center of the property. It is not situated in a special flood hazard area, and again, the soils report was generated by a Connecticut soil scientist to show the exact location of wetlands and water courses. Important issues raised under the application required to demonstrate that the applicants avoid or minimize wetland and water course impacts, utilize measures to preserve water quality, address potential drainage impacts, and provide measures to mitigate for unavoidable impacts and overall the conservation values of the regulated areas and property. A detailed site plan came back to this office. There are no direct wetland and water course encroachments as a result of the new construction. The applicant reports that about 5,600, a little bit more than 5,600 square feet of the upland review area is affected. Those areas are generally supportive of lawn, planting beds, pavement, or other previously developed spaces. In general, the primary structures are no less than 50 feet to the wetlands, and the lesser structures such as the pool fencing encroach about half that distance, about 28 feet to the wetlands and water courses. Approximately 14 of the larger trees shown on the civil drawings will be lost, along with the foundation shrubs that currently occupy the building. A great deal of attention went into the issue of drainage and water quality. The drainage issue was addressed with a detailed plan and report by a Connecticut engineer. The construction will necessitate that he formulate a post-construction management of the wetlands, of the drainage. It's broken into a couple of areas that are going to be, with the new imperviousness being directed to banks of infiltrators that have been appropriately sized. So to the south, the applicant proposes to install about 40 Cultex to accommodate portions of the dwelling drive, parking court, and other related spaces. To the north, there'll be another bank of 15 Cultex to accommodate portions of the dwelling pool and patio. A drainage analysis was conducted, and it showed that for the 2 to 50-year storms that all existing drainage patterns will remain the same, and for the rate and volume of runoff will be diminished for each storm in that 2 to 50-year range. And again, there was the fresh meadow approach was used that the town has embraced. And the project engineer has concluded that there's no adverse impact on drainage or the adjoining properties. There's been a basic operations and maintenance plan that's been provided. And also we can report that the applicant has committed to the cleaning of some drainage structures that are currently, there's piping that goes under a private access road and some other points of access that should be cleaned and maintained and be part of the overall scheme. In terms of water quality, erosion control plan has been provided, collection structures, equipped with deep soils and bell traps, and infiltration used to seize upon the soil's ability to attenuate those kinds of impacts in temperature and cold and those kinds of things. The enhancements are important on the property. Right now, the areas in the wetlands and adjoining the wetlands have historically been impacted or in many places have been devoid of native vegetation. And there's a couple plans have been submitted in response to staff's request and the agency's request with one of them focusing on the water course north of the gravel driveway. And there's been a variety of native tree shrubs and shrubs that are in the ground covers that are being proposed for the area to provide a buffer to filter the runoff and improve the conservation values of the property. Second plan was for the remaining wetland pocket. And so they have provided a planting plan to not only to improve its function, but to improve the aesthetics. Staff would recommend that, and that maybe some reallocation of the plantings as perhaps a condition of the approval would be to reallocate some of those plantings to another portion of the watercourse that currently has lawn right to the edge. It's a minor adjustment to the plan. Other resource protection, they came up with a tree protection plan. They had an arborist look at some of the trees. They have a demarcation feature that's being proposed on relevant elements. One other thing that we should just note for the record in terms of the drainage analysis, that we have received positive comments back from the town's consulting engineer confirming impacts in design. I'm available for questions. Brian Mueller is here this evening too, if you have questions.
Brian?
Good evening, Brian Mueller, professional engineer, state of Connecticut. Mr. Talamelli always does such a great job summarizing, so I don't want to repeat anything or waste people's time, so if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Laura, we'll start with you. Anything?
I still have my changing required to recommend it. I don't think that actually ever took place. I may have given feedback on that last time. I think and the only other thing for the operations and maintenance plan was that we preferred documented and versus visual inspections.
Yeah.
So it's a visual, I think.
Yeah, no, we can have a documented operation and maintenance report done too, for sure. Like a 8.5 by 11 packet or something that we give to the homeowner. We typically do that at the end of the construction. I like to have it on the plan during construction so that everybody sees it, because if it's not on the plan, everybody throws the reports out.
Yeah.
No one looks at them. So I've been trying to put them on the plans in other towns too, but the only place so far that wants them on there is Stanford. So, but yeah, no, I have a packet already. I just haven't pushed it around to anybody yet.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, so there are plantings along the depression north of the gravel driveway. But is there any reason why they weren't also put on the portion that's south of I think it's south of the driveway?
So south of the driveway, if
Right.
that wetland area, those wetland markings were more of a drainage ditch. It wasn't, those wetland soils were only in the ditch, and I think I have Ms. Mock here, who's our wetland soil scientist and planting expert. She could elaborate, but I think it's because it's a really defined channel, and we didn't want to disturb it. The reviewing engineer also had asked questions about it, if it's stable or not, and I had recommended that we don't touch it because it is stable right now. The only time it's not is part of this construction process is we're going to clean out, like Mr. Talamelli said,
Yeah.
some of the culverts there.
Right.
So what happens now is when it rains, it kind of fills up and then it
Yeah.
has a tipping point where then there's possible erosion.
Right.
So by doing that, hopefully we can pass water through there more appropriately than having it flood and cause erosion. So right now, we're not proposing any plants there just because there's also a lot of canopies and large trees there. So unless they were shade shrubs or plantings, I don't think they would strive there. In the upper portion, that's where there's a lot more sunlight that comes in from the west as the sun rises in the east, so this is along the east side of the property. It gets good midday sun, not too hot in the afternoon, and that area has been neglected. There's definitely been
Yeah.
debris and stuff dumped
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Not so much in the lower channels because it's pretty obvious it's a ditch, and common sense would say don't dump lawn debris and leaves in there because you'll have your own problems then. So I think we focused more on the northeasterly portion because that was the portion of the wetlands that needed the most attention. And we also did provide an additional planting plan for the little pocket of wetlands where basically was probably created because that culvert got clogged up.
Okay.
So, and we have no problem with Mr. Talamelli's recommendation to maybe move some of those to, you know, beef up the northeasterly portion. The owner wants to have those natural habitats on their property. They have young kids and boys, so they want to be able to enjoy nature and enjoy their property
Right.
simultaneously, so.
Right, okay. That's all I have for right now.
And that was the point of what I was saying, that I think there should be a revision to the plan that provides a little bit of buffer around the pocket wetland,
Yeah,
and also around that other section of the water course there. And even if it goes from a meadow to no mow, or a combination of things, even if it's kind of de minimis, I think it's gonna be helpful long-term in maintaining the integrity of the slope, erosion, and filtering runoff.
yeah, and there's not gonna be any additional runoff going into that ditch that's south of the gravel driveway.
Should be less now.
Should be less because of the Coltex,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, it should be less.
Yeah, yeah, no, I actually, that drains through another property as I,
It drains through a couple, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm actually familiar with that, and it does, when it rains hard, it does, I walk through there, and it
Mhm.
does, I have seen it overflow into the road on Greenleaf Avenue,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that there was
Yeah,
nothing.
this should hopefully throttle this flow back a little bit, because like I said, if it can't, as it starts to rain, if it can't get out, you know, it's like a flooding river, it peaks usually days or hours after it
Yeah.
rains, you know, so you wanna get the water to get out, the initial flush.
Right, and that's where it ends, it doesn't continue, you know, for a couple of miles, I mean, it gets to Greenleaf Avenue and it stops.
Yep, and it
so-
goes into culverts
Yeah.
and things, so,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
no problem.
This isn't too substantive, but the pool fence that's going easterly, is there a reason that it needs to be so far eastern as opposed to containing the pool area? See, there's a patio, but it's jutting a little bit into the review area, but I just wonder why can't that be brought back a little?
Honestly, we may not even do a pool fence, because the building code changed.
Yeah.
That's the other part. of the
Yeah,
question.
so, you know, I don't necessarily agree with that change, but hey, if we can get away with not doing fences, I know there's a lot of property owners that don't want, it's awkward and weird to have a fence sometimes for a pool.
And I know, I think you said there were children, so, you know, there
Yeah.
might be other factors, so I'm not against fences.
Yeah, and I think if we did push it out there, it was probably so that there was recreational space for them to play inside of a fence. And again, that fence I can't say is final. And we'd be willing to, before it gets installed, meet with Mr. Talamelli to see if his opinion is we have to come back in front of you. But we're not gonna be putting up a fence into the wetland area. That would probably be the furthest extent. If we wanted to go further, we would come back.
Thank you,
Yeah.
okay.
No additional questions, Mr. Chairman?
No question. Comments?
Okay.
Oh,
Rick,
to
I think-
answer, I wanted to just answer
Sure.
your question about the PDFs. Some people's Adobes don't have the capability to combine the PDFs. So like one of my employees, PDF writers for some reason, and this is all through my company, it won't let him combine the PDFs if they get sent to him in two separate sheets.
But you could, yeah.
You gotta ask the engineer to send them to you as a set.
Well, how, I mean, you could be in AutoCAD and print
Yes, you
plot
can-
page 1, and
Yep.
then print plot page 2, open Adobe PDF.
Yeah, but it has to be done by the engineer. So if like
Ah.
Ms. Mock is submitting it and she doesn't have AutoCAD, then she can't do it. And if Wayne's doing it, he'd probably send her two separate PDFs, if I had to guess.
Okay.
Just wanna throw that out there.
Man,
So
Techie.
people,
I've had that
You're
problem.
a techie, good for you.
I've had that problem, so.
Very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
So,
You making
Rick,
notes for that, Rick? Is this?
Yeah. I got it.
so Rick, you'll follow up on a couple of items there? The fence, the replanting,
Draft a resolution.
and draft a resolution, so I think, whatever you, and I guess it's Alexander who's gonna be doing this, whatever you agree, you sign off the staff to the
Yeah,
plan
condition.
as a conditional approval. Okay? Great. Moving on.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Good night. DPC 12-2023, 300 Mansfield Avenue, Country Club of Darien, Inc., to replace an existing pump house and irrigation system in and approximate to wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. The property lies along the east side of Mansfield Avenue, approximately 1,750 feet north of Buttonwood Lane, and is identified as map number 5, lot 40. The zone is R2, and there's approximately 1,339, sorry about that, and 51 acres. Okay,
Correct.
okay, 139.001. I don't know why I have trouble with that one. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, as you had indicated, this application is a pretty extensive application that's involving the upgrade, the demolition of the existing pump house there, and the upgrade of the reconstruction and creating of a new pump station and irrigation system to serve the golf course and related facilities. The application was accepted at last month's meeting. Staff had generated, site inspections generated a list of information necessary, felt was necessary to properly evaluate the application with the input from the commission members, and the project engineer and his team has responded back promptly with a quality application. The project itself is really comprised of, well, let's just talk about the site characteristics. I mean, I think everybody's been to the golf course, and it has wetlands that are maintained as turf or lawn or rough, and they have wetlands that are wooded wetlands, and they also have a pretty substantial reach of the Good Wives River, and then they have the floodplain that's there as well. They have regulatory pieces that involve the wetlands, watercourses, and buffers ranging from 50 feet to wetlands and 100 feet to open bodies of water. So the project itself, in my mind, is really comprised of three pieces. The first, and probably the most substantial, is the replacement of the pump station. So they're demolishing the pump station and creating a new flood-proof station. The current station gets flooded during the 100-year storm and lesser storms. But in doing so, you say, oh, it's a pump station, but inside of the station itself, it has a great number of pumps and electrical components and all these things that you don't want to be storm damaged. So the structure, the new structure is going to provide for floors, elevation of floors, all the electrical components, as well as some things that are just on the outside of that pump station, including transformers, a standby generator that's necessary, all going to be raised 1 foot above the base flood elevation. The second component piece is they are replacing the intake from the source of water from the ponds on the property. There's currently there a smaller intake that is suction-based that uses electricity, draws water into the pump station, and is dispersed there. The intent is to put a new intake, different construction, going to a fairly deeper portion of the pond that's going to be gravity fed. So that will take intake water, and it will necessitate removal of the existing station at the pond's edge, laying new pipe, capping the old pipe, and repairing the bank and improving the embankments around what's called Mansfield Pond out there. The third, and probably the most far-reaching, is replacing all the distribution on the golf course. So that's all the pipes, the valves, the sprinkler heads, and that necessitates It necessitates that they trench throughout the property and do the installations. It involves, I think, 5 watercourse crossings, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's essentially the third component. Now, the applicant has secured the services of an irrigation specialist that works with golf courses, and they're used to doing these things, and the idea being to minimize the disturbance. So they've tailored their application to, again, minimize disturbance because it involves starting during planes, interrupt plane time, they don't want significant disturbance that's going to cause regrading and those kinds of things, and have long-term impacts. So you'll note in your application packages there's different trenching or excavation activities that are involved. The more traditional excavation activities that you see are linked to the the pump house construction and the intake construction, and there's a whole series of trenching devices and poles to get the distribution. They're also using directional drilling under the water courses that doesn't necessitate that you have to handle water substantially in the crossing of the water courses or costly bank reparations. So, and again, this is all towards reducing the disturbance. So with that in mind, we have, what is the applicant required to do as part of the review process here? Is they need to show that they've minimized the impact on wetlands and water courses. What's very important is water handling, particularly with the creation of this intake. They and provide measures to avoid drainage impact, addressing the floodplain issues that are commonly associated with these types of projects, and coming up with meaningful mitigation where it's appropriate. So a site development plan has been provided, and the applicant reports that the encroachments will temporarily or permanently affect about 3,000 feet of wetlands, 50 linear feet of water course, 2,000 feet of open water, and 5,600 square feet of the floodplain, and about 4,600 square feet of the upland review area. Large property, large facility. The primary structure of the pump house lies no less than 43 feet to the edge of the pond and 28 feet to wetlands. Other project, the encroachments vary with other project elements. Only 5 trees will be lost in the vicinity of the pump house as a result of the construction. And again, most of the areas affected by the entire project are confined to the usable portions of the golf course, turf grasses and rough. Is approximate in terms of drainage. The project will result in less than 200 square feet of new impervious surface, de minimis amount of expected increase in runoff, plus it's on a 139 acre parcel, distant from property boundaries. Location of disturbance is close to the large open water ponds. They have storage in the ponds, and the applicant's project engineer has confirmed and has certified there's no adverse impact on drainage in the adjoining properties. Most of the new roof associated with the pump station will drop to the ground over splash pads and dissipate in the ground before. Project engineer has also, in terms of structural floodproofing, structural impact on flood heights, has confirmed it will have no adverse impact on flood heights, given the de minimis change in grading and new facilities that are above ground and situated in the floodplain. The intake that's in the confines of the pond. Now, the intake is a larger pipe. It'll sit out in the pond, it's seated on the bottom of the pond on hard material, it's held with these sacks and cabled in there. But they have provided a statement and an assessment of what the potential impact is on the pond. It will affect, of course, the bank, because you're removing the substantial, but they've come out with a restoration plan. But they've also noted that, given the profile of the pipe, the depth of the water, and the anticipated draw, which is limited by, is it the state or the Army Corps?
Army Corps.
Army Corps, is that there's no, and the location of the inlet, in the mitigation proposed, that there's no adverse impact on the pond. Meaning, it doesn't have very much of a draw from the pond, it's in a low profile, it's not gonna interfere with circulation patterns in the pond. Water quality, all those things that we talked about. They have an erosion control plan, they're using dirt bags to filter runoff, those synthetic bags. They have storage and stockpile areas, they've done those things that we talked about to minimize the soil disturbance with the trenching, a practice and procedures that limit the amount that can be opened up on a given day. It has to be backfilled and re-turfed at the end of a given day. And again, the structural drilling or borings is important, plus the equipment that they have, which usually when you do a directional bore, is they usually have open pits on either end, but their equipment provides for vacuuming up the excess, and they do the pole, and it's a more prompt process that doesn't require any kind of long-term impacts. Just as an aside, they're reusing the generator that's there, and it's diesel fuel, and we did a little investigation, and it does have a belly tank that's double-walled steel. So that's a decent, basic generator, perhaps a future tank or future generator if they could use propane gas or anything for water quality purposes. But right now, with the reuse of this, they have some basic features that help protect water quality on the tank. I think probably the most essential element here is water handling, particularly with the intake. So they have a whole series of procedures that they've outlined for the commission, meaning that they're doing, they're going to essentially digging in the driest conditions possible. They've also, in the fall and early winter, there's going to be pump down and a whole diversion practice where the upper pond is diverted to the lower pond by some pumping, just to get it, and they have it all figured out in terms of what is the.
So when they pump out, are they gonna go pump it all downstream?
They pump it
Into the lower pond?
yeah,
And what happens,
Just-
in the lower pond's gonna be vacant?
just beyond the lower pond, because the upper pond discharges to the lower pond.
Mhm.
So there's gonna be essentially a diversion. They're also gonna manipulate the gates in order to lower the water to the lowest possible, then come up with then they have a whole pumping procedure that is going to keep the water in the lowest and driest conditions possible. They've also done a plan, emergency response plan, and they designated who's responsible for it, looking for long-term forecasting before they attempt these things, and coming up with procedures to remove the equipment in the event of a storm of magnitude comes. But again, they're doing it in a more dry season, less flood-prone, storm-intensive seasons as well. Floodproofing, again, of the pump house itself, again, it's basically through elevation. We have certifications from both the architect and structural engineer about the integrity of it and capable of withstanding flood forces. So up to the 100-year storm and consistent with the local regulation. A mitigation plan has also been offered, and it's been basically focused around the pump house and the banks where the greatest encroachments are. And so it includes tree shrubs and ground covers that are native, and demarcation features where it's appropriate to use it. And then there had been a question about the efficiency of the irrigation system, and in your package is a statement from the irrigation contractor how this will promote and more efficient use of water. The thing on the golf course is efficient use of the water that you have, and it has limitations imposed by the state and others. And so this particular system is going to be replacing an outdated system, and they're trying to conserve both energy and better manage water with the implementation of the system. It includes, just for the record, a gravity intake in lieu of electric powered suction system, high efficiency pump motors, variable speed drives, use of advanced sprinkler head technology where uniformly apply waters to select portions of the course, individual controllers on sprinkler heads, increased reliance on not the one with the sprinklers, they can control where it actually sprays. And there's actually has troubleshooting technologies where they can trace and track down any potential leaks or line breaks or malfunctions.
Do they have hygrometers? What's the one where they measure the moisture in the soil to say, hey, it's dry, so I need to go? In sprinkling technology, I know for houses, they have it so that if there's a sensor in the sprinkler that says, hey, it just rained, because how many times have we seen sprinklers go on in the rain? Okay, well that's, if the soil is sufficiently humid, okay, then it automatically cuts the.
I don't know if it's based on hydrometers or if it's a gauge.
No, okay, well, there's gotta be something there.
There's gotta be
yeah.
something there.
It sounds like they have it, but I'm sure you have the answer to that, so.
It's all computer driven now.
But it's, I think more so is that they have the ability to control pieces of the course individually, so they can, if they see that this needs water, they can turn it onto this.
Mhm.
So these controller boxes will be about the same.
Yeah. Okay, are you done?
Yep.
Good evening, my name is Patrick Schur. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut, a project engineer with Brenda Smead, and we're providing engineering, land surveying, and permitting services to Country Club at Darien. We're joined by Jameson Lappin, the ground superintendent of the club, Brian Finchesi, the irrigation consultant, and Alexandra Mock, the wetland scientist and landscape designer. Mr. Talamelli covered a lot of the information, so I'll try to keep it quick and get to questions. The existing pump house is currently located in the southern portion of the site, right in the middle between Mansfield Pond and Club Pond. The pump draws water in from Mansfield Pond. So currently we have the 12-inch gravity or a suction line that will be removed. Cut back from the pond bank. They'll also be removing the intake structure and then also cut back from the existing pump house. It'll be capped and abandoned in place. The new pump house occupies the same footprint as the existing one. It's just about 8 feet farther to the south. The existing transformer and generator will be relocated to accommodate the new grades and then also lifted a foot above the base flood elevation. The building itself is also a foot above the base flood elevation. We performed a flood study. It's a zone A, so we had to define the flood elevation, and so everything has been set 1 foot above it, consistent with the regulations. Currently, the club maintains a water diversion permit that allows them to withdraw 375,000 gallons a day, plus an additional 400,000 from bedrock wells that are used to replenish the irrigation pond. Wetlands were flagged around the ponds, and the proposed improvements do occur in the upland review area. Construction on the new intake pipe will require Mansfield Pond to be lowered in elevation. Both Mansfield Pond and Club Pond feature removable weirs or valves that allow them to manually drop the elevation a certain extent. So what will happen is they will open the valve on Club Pond, drop it, I believe, 2 to 3 feet, and then shut it and begin dewatering Mansfield Pond. Mansfield Pond will also at the same time have its weir open, which will allow it to drop in about a foot. And then the temporary pumping will just send water on the other side of the weir and start dropping that elevation. Now that we've been provided storage in here, you won't get any flow in and the pumps won't be working against anything. Once the water elevation is met, the pumps will be moved up to Club Pond and divert water to the downstream side of the weir serving Mansfield Pond. They expect construction to take about 2 to 5 days. The pond itself consists of about a foot of soft silty material on top of hard soil. And so they'll be able to clear that off, put down the Saccrete base and extend the pipe on top of it. We're not really concerned about sedimentation getting downstream because the pond will be basically empty at that point. All the silt will be able to settle out before they resume sending water back down to the pond. A big concern was how to handle a potential big, large rain event. Luckily, it is a golf course, and I don't think anyone tracks weather more closely than they do. So they're gonna monitor it and will not start construction unless you have a forecast that has about 5 to 7 days.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
In the case of a severe weather event,
Mhm.
and we've had a couple 500-year storms in the near past, is it Country Club of Darien's policy to sort of pre-storm, let water go, and then to let water go and to go downstream? Because we know a major weather event is coming. So those ponds, not only because if you keep them at a certain level, and then all of a sudden you have 6 inches in less than 24 hours.
Mhm.
Okay, all of a sudden, that's gonna overflow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna overflow, which of course floods, the grounds around it. So what does Darien Country Club do and when they know a known weather event's coming?
Under current conditions, just
Yes.
if they open these weirs and drop, do you ever do preemptive?
So we take the weir off Mansfield Pond in the wintertime, which drops it down about 1.5 feet all winter long. That's as low as we can manually drop it. And then in the summertime, I've been there for 2 years. Each time we've had a big rain event, the pond's already been well
Yeah.
below what we can drop it. So it provides storm surge in that aspect, but we've never been able to actually drop it before a storm.
Okay, no, just curious because it's a big issue around town.
Yep.
Okay, one of the larger issues actually is flooding. And you actually have a system to be able to, you have capacity that says, well,
Mitigate.
if there was mitigation possible, you could do that. Okay, just to, it would smart, I'll tell you, okay?
Yeah.
It's just smart water management, but from a town's perspective. But anyway, sorry for getting off track.
It's no problem. But then I guess in the event, if during construction a large rain event does come, since we're not really damming anything up or creating a temporary barrier, they'll just be able to pull out of the pond and let the water resume its normal flow path, and it won't put any downstream properties at risk. In reality, as you pointed out, it would provide additional storage and help absorb some of that storm surge. We are proposing new plantings, screening the building, and then also some wetland plantings along the banks of the 2 ponds in the area closest to the proposed development. And then the final aspect is the improvements to the club's irrigation system. There's 3 different methodologies for installation. The first is for pipes under 2 inches. They're just going to pull it, which is a system, they've got a machine that just pulls it through with a blade on top and just no disturbance, no spoils. It's pretty clean. The second, for the larger pipes, they'll use a trenching machine and dig a 12-inch trench by 24. They'll cut the sod before they go in, excavate, put the pipe in, backfill, compact, and then put the same sod right back on. 250 linear feet max at any time will be open. They'll have it closed at night. So they really don't want to leave any disturbance or cause any disturbance to the golf course. And the final is the directional drilling under the water courses. It's small receiving pits on either end. They drill through, they have a vacuum on the system that takes any spoils, and they will immediately truck it away from the area and store it on site. So there's no issues of spoils being stored in the upland review area or next to water courses. We've also responded to comments from Joe Canas that were received on April 13th. Our response memo and supporting materials were submitted May 2nd, and we just received confirmation today that we addressed all his comments. Similarly, we addressed comments received from Mr. Talamelli on April 10th, and to our knowledge, our response sufficiently addressed the outstanding comments. So if you have any questions.
Good. Bill?
Yeah, the aquifer you pull from large volumes on a daily basis, do you have any data that shows the recharge back on that? Is there, so that you're draining it out and maybe it's during the hot days of summer or whatever, it probably draws the whole thing down and doesn't recharge. But I'm just curious, over time, is it, are you losing steam on that thing, or are you keeping the balance of the water in the aquifer? Do you have any data that shows that, or is there a way to do that?
I'm not sure, that'd be a perfect question for James.
Yeah, J.R. LePan, superintendent at the Country Club of Darien. So the water we use on the golf course comes from our irrigation ponds. And then we have 4 supporting wells that we actually just did a study on to make sure that we're using them in a consistent manner and not over pumping, but we don't have any current data to see where the level is on the aquifer.
So it's kind of hard to tell if you're over pumping or not.
Well, you can tell because the flow load reduces, but we're restricted from the state of Connecticut on how much we can withdraw anyways, so we're kind of capped at that amount.
Thanks.
It's all subject to a D permit, right?
Yeah, it's all DEP permitted, and we're just doing additional studies to see what the proper pumping rate should be. So in times of drought like last season, we don't start to run the aquifer dry.
Maybe questions for the superintendent. Does the generator provide standby power for the pump house?
Yeah, so that's in case of emergency, and the purpose of it is just to power one pump. So if we lose power for 3 or 5 days, we can have one pump going so we can hand water the putting greens and keep the high priority grass alive until we get power back.
What type of generator is it? Like liquid cooled, air cooled? How big is it?
I'm not sure the answer to that.
Wow.
I remember.
Wow, I didn't think that would happen.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one.
Well,
I think it's liquid cooled.
yeah. Is it a big generator?
Yeah, it's large.
So it's probably liquid cooled, and probably over 27 kW.
Yes, it's over
Okay.
that.
And the fuel reservoir for that is in the generator itself, not a separate tank.
It's below it.
It's
The
below it.
belly tank.
Yeah. And do you know, what's the proximity of the generator to the pond?
It's gotta be 30 feet,
Okay,
25
so
feet. It's pretty
It's
close.
It's not terribly close to the pond.
No, it's outside of the wetland, but in the review
In the
area.
upland review area. So, the question is, if you're gonna be doing all of this trenching, would you consider moving the generator? There's two thoughts that just came to mind. Is one, converting the generator so you don't have to go buy a new one, from diesel to gas, and moving it out of the upland review area, and while you're trenching it, just trench the power to the pump. Is that something you guys would consider?
Well, we're kind of trenching in the opposite direction.
But you got trenching equipment there.
True. And just so we're sure the generator is closer to the club pond by 25 feet.
Excuse me, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, one is, could you come up because the microphone is there,
Sure.
and the young lady, could you identify yourself?
Brian Vincasey, I'm the irrigation consultant.
Oh,
So I designed the new system, but I actually designed the old system 25 plus years ago. So there's the club pond and the irrigation pond. The diesel generator is closer to the club pond, not to the main pond we pick the water out. So all our trenches is going that way. But the generator is about 6 or 7 years old. It hasn't been there a long time. But as Jameson said, it's just there to run one pump. And that would be a 40, right?
Yeah.
For one 40 horsepower pump, even though there's 3 of them. So,
Presumably, the application to install a generator came before EPC?
Well,
that's 20, how many years ago?
well, the
generator's-
irrigation was
generator's
25 years.
only
I
6
think the
years old.
generator was like 8 or 9, I'm not sure.
There was probably something there before, because if I had to guess, because I don't remember an application like that coming in before, but they could have replaced it. And they could have replaced it, and since there's
Yeah.
there's no implication for the watershed at that point.
So another thought I had, I mean, I'm just giving you some things to opine on as you improve your facility, which I have no problem on, is you have practically an unlimited supply of fuel if you are gas as opposed to diesel. So if that pump is important, I would expect gas. not, natural, a gaseous supply of fuel, not diesel. Okay.
Have you guys thought of that? Have you considered it? Let's put it this way. Or is it something you would like to take back and talk amongst yourselves?
Jamieson's only been there 2 years. I was on the sidelines of the generator discussion, to be honest. All I know is when they told me what they were gonna put in, I said it's too small, and that was the extent of how I got involved. It was very club-driven per se, so we'd have to go back and find out.
Okay, then let's leave it that you guys will circle and think about this, think about the question and come up with a response. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
For the record, the reason why I'm asking the questions is because it's a diesel generator within the upland review area. We've had similar conversations about this with residential applications, and I believe for the record, we've been much more strict regarding the location of generators, keeping them outside of the upland review area. I would think just the conversation we had would be a benefit to the club, and the economics regarding that wouldn't break the members'.
well, no, you don't have to replace the diesel tank, you don't have to worry about it. I mean, that's everybody's nightmare, okay,
yeah,
is
so-
an oil tank.
It might be prudent exercise, but I offer that.
They've got the homework assignment, is that fair?
So, and then quickly, a second question is, the piping, to run the irrigation, is that like, what I was imagining is it PVC piping that's held under pressure? Like you roll out like a gas line pipe, and then that supplies main supply between valves, and then you have little hoses?
So
How does
the
that work?
the gravity feed pipe from the pond is a PVC pipe. The new pipe, the old pipe for the irrigation is PVC, under pressure all the time. The new pipe is HDP like gas, under pressure all the time.
And so when you're intersecting the wetlands with the piping, if it's going on the bed of a pond, or if it's just going through a wetland area, is that just one, could be many in the trench, but are they all their own PVC pipe, or are there smaller lines inside of that? The distribution?
Well, technically, we're technically not in the wetland other than the pond, right?
Well, there will be wetland crossings throughout the golf course where there's different, wherever you're running it across up different holes, yeah.
So normally, there's going to be one pipe in the trench. We have two types of pipe. We have the big pipe, which is the main, the feed pipes, then we have little pipes go off to do the sprinklers. So, and as it was stated, the big pipe gets trenched, the little pipe gets pulled. And so there's very rarely more than one pipe in a trench or in a pool.
So when you supply the sprinkler heads, are you doing like a T off of the main line? I guess what I'm.
Thank you for that.
So the question I'm getting at, as you're penetrating through the wetlands and you're teeing off the main line.
Yes.
If you start to have a leak and then you're inadvertently supplying more water to the wetland, how do you know that T is broken?
We'll know right away because of the technology and the drop in pressure and the way the pump station has, since it's under pressure all the time, you'll know if you have a leak right away because the pump station has a very little pump in there that does nothing but pressure maintenance.
Measure pressure.
And you can just tell by how often it's cycling. So if it's cycling in less than 7 minutes, you've got leaks.
Okay.
So different superintendents are different, but some are very anal about finding every little drop that's leaking.
Right.
So, but basically, it's hard to see, but the dash line is the main line and the solid lines are the lateral lines. They all tee off to the sprinklers. And each one is isolated. So if I have a leak on a sprinkler, I can isolate it off.
Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty cool stuff.
It's very cool stuff.
I have no other questions.
Does the golf course still maintain its Audubon certification, JR?
Yeah, we just got recertified in 2021, and we're up for renewal next year.
I think
Congratulations.
would be
Good. I didn't
pleased to know that I happen to be aware of it, but JR just reconfirmed that CCD isn't
Good thing.
Audubon certified?
Audubon certified, and with part of that too comes with all of our ponds, we have buffers around them. We have to have at least 75% wetland plantings around each one of our water courses. Most of them are more than 75%, but we do have a buffer around all of our waterways.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So for the distribution piping, only as it pertains to the regulated areas that we're dealing with. The old piping, is that gonna be decommissioned and stays in place, or will that be removed?
It is decommissioned and stays in place. You'd have a lot more disturbance to remove it.
Exactly, thank you. And then the old piping, did that come before this commission before? And do we have a schematic of the old piping? Or do you have it that you can submit it to the record so that we'll have that for
We certainly
future
have
boards?
a map of what's in the ground now, yes. Whether, let's see, I put it in. Back then, whether we had to go in front of the commission. I can't remember whether we did or not.
Because I think it would be helpful to have that just as part of this record, understanding that within the regulated areas, the decommissioned piping will stay in ground, just, you know.
So the decommission part is, they take all the sprinklers that are there off.
Yep,
And they're on a piece of pipe, we call it swing joint.
The
It's on a piece
heads,
of
the
pipe.
heads are-
Right, so
yes.
we unscrewed the head,
yep,
we capped that,
right,
because we don't want to chase water in the old system,
yep,
thinking it's a leak in the new system. So we
Right.
do what we can to cap all that, so we don't have water running through the old system.
right.
But we have that map, we can certainly provide it.
I just think it would be helpful to have, just as part of the record, if it's possible.
Right, you very much see the difference between 25 years ago and now, how different things are.
Yeah, but I.
Because the spacing is different, everything is different.
Yeah, I'm thinking more in terms of, you know, when we're not on this commission and when you all are, you know, not employed and off retired to Florida, that the next generation has it someplace. That's all.
Carolyn?
I had several questions, but I actually met with Mr. Le Pen earlier today, and it was mostly, I had questions about just how the dewatering process worked for the Mansfield Pond and some other questions. But I like this project because I like the native plantings that are going alongside the ponds, because, you know, any sort of treatment in the, you know, the grassy area, you know, it's going to filter that. And also the energy savings and the water savings from the new sprinkler system, I think, is, you know, really important. And the fact that the current system is leaking, as I understand, right? There's been some leaks from
Yeah, correct.
the
We had-
existing system.
Yeah, I mean, we had 6 big leaks last year, each of which we lost over 100,000 gallons on each leak, which in a droughty season is a significant amount of
Yeah.
water. And that's part of the new system too. Right now, we have no way to detect that until we go out into the golf course and see water
There's
in
not any
there.
reason they're replacing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
Spending
part, yeah,
money.
which is why the reason, but at least now we'll get a notification if, hey, there's a pipe that's broken or head that's leaking. The new technology sends an alert to your
Right.
phone, which is nice to have.
And for all the reasons that Rick gave, it's a much better system in terms of, you know, saving water, all the various improvements in the new system, so I think that's good.
And to answer your question about the moisture sensors, this does not have moisture sensors because they have 6 portable moisture sensors, which are actually much better because they can put them anywhere they want instead of having them permanently in the ground. The golf business had a brief period of time where soil moisture sensors was a big deal, and then everybody's gotten away from it. But we do have 4 rain gauges. We have the ability with this system to assign every sprinkler to a certain rain gauge. So if we get water on one part of the golf course, we can automatically adjust the irrigation schedule to put down less water based on the rain, or to just shut off based on the rain in that area. Whereas if the other part of the golf course gets no rain or less rain, it adjusts the timing accordingly, which is another water saving system.
Thank you for answering that.
I don't have any question.
I was interested in the horizontal drilling operation and so typically they have to use a type of like drilling slurry to shoot into the ground, and so do they need to, so do you know exactly like which type of material they're shooting into?
They usually use a bentonite base type material.
No, the chemical. Like the slurry-ish type of.
I do not know which it is, but we can certainly find out because we know who the driller is.
I'm curious because in my experience, you need a permit to discard that wastewater. And so if they're collecting it, which it seems like they have the cool technology to collect the water so that you don't have to worry about it contaminating the ground here, but then they have to go do something else with it. And so what's in that water has to be covered in the...
I would say I do these all the time, and I do the bores all the time, and we have never had one that had to be permitted for what we were using. So that's all I can say, but we can certainly find out. But I believe they use something that's relatively inert since it's just the golf course.
Mhm. Okay.
Is the idea that you're using a abrasive to make the hole in the ground, that's what bentonite is?
No, we're trying to just get something to slide better.
Oh, it's like
Yeah,
wire
exactly.
lubricant, yeah.
Mhm.
So, because when they bore across and then they pull the pipe back.
Right.
Any other commission members? Sorry.
Sorry, and then you said you didn't know how big the belly tank was for the generator? Or
No.
do you?
No, I'm not sure. Do
We'll
you have
have
this
to-
one on it?
I can submit the spec, we have it, I just don't have it with me right now.
Who has to wake up in the middle of the night and run over there and fill it with fuel before it runs out?
That's me. Thankfully, we haven't used this since I've been there, so we'll hopefully keep that going.
Did it require an air permit? Is it that big, the generator?
Excuse me, what permit?
Do you know if you have an air permit for the generator? If
I don't think
requires
it's
it?
that big.
Okay. Okay, small.
Any other commission member? Thank you very much for coming and answering our number of questions. This was a great application, and I think this is, doing absolutely the right thing.
Thank
So,
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll be creating a
Yep.
resolution.
Okay, the next item of business is 14 Meadowbrook Road, M. Buraldi and El Buraldi, to construct residential additions, modify drive and parking areas, and conduct other related activities proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. Property lies along the south side of Meadowbrook Road, approximately 850 feet east of Brookside Road, and is identified as map number 14, lot number 11. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.9148 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, as you noted, the project is to construct certain residential additions, modify the drive and parking areas, and conduct other related activities on the parcel. For those of you that have been to the site, you may recall that property contains both wetlands and watercourses. It's residentially developed. There's a house, there's all the amenities that you typically associate with a dwelling. But the site not only contains the developed lands, but wetlands maintained as lawn, wetlands held as woodland, and portions of 2 watercourses. If you may recall, the one portion of the property, or just off the property, is a more substantial reach of Tokenie Brook that's lying on properties to the south and east of this site. A soils report was completed, and those flags have been added to the plans. The property is not situated in the special flood hazard area. The applicant was required to demonstrate, as with all these applications of this sort, it has limited the impacts on wetlands and watercourses. Issues relating to water quality and drainage have been brought to the attention of the applicant, and measures to mitigate for unavoidable impacts or to improve the overall functionality of the regulated areas. With that, a site development plan has been provided. There are no direct wetland or watercourse encroachments. The applicant reports that the encroachments affect both temporarily or permanently about 830 square feet of the upland review area, and that's generally limited to lawn, planting areas, pavement, or other space. The primary structures and related features no less, lie less than 30 feet, 6 feet to the wetlands and 50 feet to the water courses. No significantly sized trees will be lost as a result of the project, with most of the removals confined to foundation planting. There has been a drainage report that has been submitted. And that drainage report reflected that there's approximately, the property generally lies in one watershed. There's an increase of approximately 229 square feet when compared to existing conditions, and the project engineer has confirmed that there'd be no increase in runoff for the storms of 2 to 50 years in magnitude. Accordingly, no adverse impact on drainage and adjoining properties. We had noted that a part of the reconfigured driveway is going to be installed as gravel. I can tell you that the project has been reviewed by the project engineer, and there are a question has been asked about looking at the gravel driveway. If the board, the commission thinks that we can move forward with getting answer those questions, that's one thing. If not, but we do not have a final endorsement of the project, but the town's consulting as engineers here if you have any questions for them as well. To protect water quality, there's been an erosion control plan that consists of double road silt fence, anti-tracking pad, and established access ways, restoring any disturbance, and an enhancement plan has been provided. If you recall that many of the commission members were out there and said, oh, there's accumulated debris in certain portions of the regulated areas. And there's invasive in some of the regulated areas, and there's some spotty spaces that, because much of the lawn has been, or much of the wetland has been maintained as lawn, there's opportunities to improve the conditions of those spaces. So an enhancement plan has been provided that provides for all of these things. It provides for cleanup. It provides for restoring some of the spaces that are currently held as lawn, more so towards the water courses. There's provisions for removal of invasives under the direction of the environmental consultant, and again, stone demarcation features where a good definition between the developed space and the restored space could be. The planting plan consists of not only shrub planting, but also creation of no-mow zones and meadow grasses and those kinds of things as well. And again, improve the overall characteristic of the wetland and stabilize the soil and filter runoff. The applicant is here this evening, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have, as well as our town's consulting engineers here.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Matthew Doherty. I'm an architect and am representing the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Baraldi, on the addition and alteration to their existing house. So basically, what we're proposing is building a new second floor above an existing structure here, and building a new two-story addition to the back of the house, as well as a new front porch. We are reconfiguring the driveway. Right now, it's kind of a circular shape, and it takes up a lot of area. We're condensing that, and then making kind of a parking area, and then an area for the garage. We have some existing patios which are set in stone dust. We'll take out what we need, and then at the end, we'll put those back in. As Mr. Palomelli had discussed, we're including, on the recommendation of the town's consultant, to include some additional silk fencing along the water course side. And then also, there's a couple areas where the lawn kind of just extends into the wetlands, where we're gonna incorporate some depressed rocks and then these into those mow areas. And then also, one of the things that we had looked at was improving kind of the landscaping buffer along this edge, which is closest to the driveway and closest to kind of this water course here. The majority of this side of the property, everything kind of just flows that way right now, so we've included some additional plantings there to help mitigate some of the storm runoff if there is any.
Okay, would commission members like to, Lauren?
Did you know that the map says 15 Meadowbrook Road, not 14?
Oops.
And
No.
so I was just confused,
They're-
it's,
They're 15.
right, not 14.
But
It's
The
supposed to be
application says 14. The application says 14. What is it,
Yeah.
14 or 15?
14? 14?
Right, but the map says 15, the assessor's map. 15 Meadowbrook Road. That's why I was confused, because is there a 15 Meadowbrook Road? I don't want
The 15
everyone to be
is
confused.
the
Yeah,
you know,
northern
there
neighbor.
is
Adjoining
15.
property.
Is it?
Could
An
be
adjoining
adjoining property.
I don't know.
No, you mean this map right here?
Is it at the top, does it say 15? Yeah,
Yes, and that's the prop, that's
Yeah,
the
that's-
adjacent owner.
So, the abutting neighbor is here, they're 15, this
Yeah,
one
they-
is 10, and then we have.
Oh, that's the neighbor.
surround- Yeah, that's the
Okay.
neighboring property.
Okay, okay, so
Yeah.
the top, so I was
Right here.
reading it like that. Okay, okay, I'm good, thank you. My mistake.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Lauren, would you like to continue, or?
No, that was enough. Tonight, thank you.
I won't add to that, I don't have any questions.
No questions.
I have no questions. I live nearby Meadowbrook Road. I've been down there numerous times, including for a storm issue, very close to the entrance to this nice home, and I have no additional question.
I have no questions, but I do have a comment that might help you out a little, is I'm looking at the map for this application, and when they PDF it, the maps get messed up. We gotta figure a way to make the maps clean, because it's gonna be difficult for us to review applications if every single call out on the maps has a text box border, and then you, just like what happened with Lauren, is it's difficult to discern the abutter from all the other data that's on the maps.
Yeah, that's what's happening here.
We miss it?
Yeah, everything is boxed.
And then similarly, if you see shading
Oh,
for,
yeah.
if you see shading,
Let me see.
I mean, we could have a conversation offline, but if you see shading for the
Yeah,
proposed
yeah.
addition, the shading goes elsewhere on the map, doesn't go where there actually is a proposed addition. And there was an application earlier today, I think it was the Mueller engineer. That map looked like the Millennium Falcon shooting through Star Wars.
An analogy. I
Dave
appreciate.
Keating would go bananas if he saw that.
Which
if he
one
saw
is
that
that?
map. That was 23 Greenleaf.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's a technical issue that's gotta be
We
addressed.
owe to the town.
Back to yours though.
Or the town
Yeah.
has to make it convenient for the applicant to upload his.
Well, I think the
Very solid.
architects, the engineers, and the consultants are all gonna hone their
Yes.
software skills.
Okay, but that's, but looking at it here on Peter's, it's like, well, yep, same.
Alright, so can I comment now on this project?
Please.
Okay, it's a much improved, taking out a lot of the lawn that was set very, very wet when I walked on it
Yeah,
some
mine's
time ago.
good.
So I appreciate you doing that, so positive, thanks.
Are you doing the latest?
Okay,
Are you doing the latest?
guys, okay,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Sorry.
Get your focus back.
Sorry.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? No? Okay, because I think this variation is much better. Thank you. Thank you for taking our questions and comments to heart and dealing with them. I appreciate that.
So we'll be drafting a resolution for next month.
Why don't you draft a resolution?
And as part of that, we'll be, securing that final engineering approval of the
Yes.
overall concept. There's some tweaking that has to be done with the drainage report.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have the approval of minutes. We have, the first item is public hearing and regular meeting of March 1, 2023. All the members should have received a copy of that, and I know Jim spent some time doing his usual magic there. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes?
My only comment is our minutes are getting awfully long when they go to 14 and 15 pages each. But I did spend time and sent edits to Rick. This goes back a couple of weeks, so he will incorporate that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so if nobody has any questions or comments, Jim, may I have a motion to approve?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the Environmental Protection Commission meeting minutes for the public hearing and regular meeting of March 1, 2023.
And second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carolyn, yes? Okay.
But abstain.
No, will you abstain? No? You abstain or?
No.
So the next item of business is public hearing and regular meeting of March 29, 2023. We have, all the commission members should have received a draft of these minutes. Any questions or comments as to these minutes? No? Jim, may I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the Environmental Protection Commission public hearing and regular meeting minutes of the meeting that took place March 29, 2023.
And second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, we have agent approval, EPC 10-2023, 24 Pasture Lane, E. Brovik and Y. Brovik to implement 80 native landscape plan in and approximate to known wetland resources and restore lawn, grass, and to an adjoining upland review area. The parcel lies along the north side of Pasture Lane, approximately 1,756 feet east of Nearwater Lane, and is identified as map number 51, lot number 53. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.08 acres. This is an agent approval. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this application came before the commission last month, and it is to landscape a wetland pocket that's on the property that's basically devoid of vegetation. And in doing so, the applicant is also proposing to restore lawn to some of the adjoining space that has been less vigorous in the past few years. In the agent approval, they prepared, again, it was the wetland was established by a soil scientist. As part of this application, again, there's a very good enhancement plan that has been provided, with the purpose being to displace lawn filter runoff, screen abutters, and improve the overall conservation values of the regulated areas and property. They're going to remove debris, implement a conservation planting plan consisting of numerous trees, shrubs, and ground covers, all native. It's also providing a buffer to the regulated areas. There had been some number of trees that had been cut on the property with staff's permission and under the protocol that we use with arborists. They identified trees that were hazardous and that they were removed. They're going to grind those stumps and install a minimal depth of topsoil and topsoil seed and mulch in the renovated lawn areas. The buffer is about 10 feet to the wetland. These activities impact about 500 square feet of wetlands and 2,300 square feet of the upland review area. There's no additional trees that have been lost, and the space was historically developed. They also provided erosion controls as necessary to protect resources and limit impacts. So staff has done this as an agent approval. There's no vote on this particular application. And again, upon acceptance, the commission had offered input which had been incorporated into the agent approval process here. But it'll be a positive for the property and the neighborhood, and provide some screening and effective improvements to the related areas.
Do any commission members have questions or comments for Rick? No?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you. Moving on. EPC 20, this is other business, EPC 20-16. 25 Salisbury Road, W. Tavishek and M. Tavishek to construct certain drainage improvements, a special flood hazard area in and within close proximity to the wetlands and watercourses. Property lies within the north side of Salisbury Road, approximately 1,375 feet west of Brookside, and is identified as map number 1, lot number 102. The zone is R2 and is approximately 1.49 acres.
So Chairman, this is an existing permit that is in effect, and the applicant is the current owner, Walter Tabashek, is requesting a transfer of permit to new prospective owners of the property, Michael Ryan and Lily Ryan. And as outlined in the correspondence that was attached to the staff memo, they have read through the permit, they understand the conditions, and want to have it transferred in the event that they want to do the work. For the record, the work included, it was a plan conceived by an engineering firm that assisted in improving some of the drainage conditions on the property, included some drainage improvement to the rear of the property with a catch basin, a junction, and an outlet pipe, which has been completed, but the work under the driveway itself, replacing some deteriorated pipes, was never accomplished. They want to preserve the right and the permit to
Okay, but this is 7 years later.
yes.
So I understand them wanting to preserve the right.
Mhm.
This is 7 years later. Do they have any intention of getting to it?
The state statute allows for, this is not expired, it's a valid permit, and that's all they're requesting is that it be transferred from owner A to owner B.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question? I thought permits were good for 5 years.
The initial permit's good for 5 years. Then you had what the regulations provide, which is an extension process. Then there was the...
Oh, it was extended.
No, it was COVID then.
But there was legislative changes that several years back that allowed for permits to be automatically extended for some period of time if they fell within a certain time frame, and that was driven by economic reasons. Then COVID happened, and the state legislature changed the requirements and outlined that permits could be extended automatically for some number of years because of, and they gave dates and deadlines of which you have to kind of fall in between. So the permit's still valid, it was carefully checked, and all they're doing is asking that it be transferred.
So does it have an expiration date, future, or does it just go on and on?
Does it have a new expiration?
Yeah,
Yes,
new
it does.
expiration. It does?
Yes, but I think it can go up to like 19 years.
Why wouldn't the person currently, the current permittee or applicant, conduct the work prior to transition and sale? Why would this commission, and I can't, Isn't there like a specific cause? Because I think COVID was the reason why we've declined a extension on an application.
Those were different circumstances for that particular application. And yes, we have.
I'm just
Yeah,
thinking
yes,
like
we have, but this is not an extension. The extension already exists.
this is a transfer.
So we can't cut, if we approved an X number of years extension, we can't abbreviate that. This is just saying, hey, this is going from person A to person B.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Because of a home sale, I assume.
Yes,
So the expiration date in place remains the same?
in place,
Right.
Yes.
remains in place.
Then I myself would be comfortable not going your approach, Michael,
No, I'm not saying
but
that
to
is.
allow
No, no,
the
no, I'm not
sale of
saying
the home to
that.
take place and the permit for whether it's 2 years, 10 years, or however long it runs properly to allow a new buyer to do that
No,
work.
we're on the same page. I was thinking, if I was the new buyer, I would want the
Oh, I
current
understand.
applicant
Yes, I understand.
to complete the work, so it was a clean transition to sale.
I understand
Because
that.
otherwise, what will happen now is the permit will transfer, it has 2 more years left. Then the new applicant will come to the commission and ask for an extension if the work isn't completed, right? They're within
The
their.
permit is going to,
They're-
I don't recall
they
off the
are
top of my
within their
head, but it
right.
could be,
No, I understand, I'm just, okay.
it's automatically,
We're gonna.
it's automatically extended because of the change in the state legislation.
We didn't have any control over that. Okay, the state legislature came in and said,
No, I understand. So you have 7 years, so 5 years are down, 2 years are left. It transfers, and then if the new owner and the new applicant doesn't do anything within the 2 years, then I believe per the statute, it's within their right to come to EPC and ask for an extension.
It's automatic.
Oh, it's automatic?
Now it's automatic.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Because this particular case fell within a
Certain, yes.
certain time period.
that legislative
Yep.
decree.
Oh, so if I pull a permit now because.
It's 5 years, it's 5 years, and
5 years.
you can apply for another 5 years, and the commission can say, we'll give you 1.
Right, but what I'm,
Okay,
so
so,
we're on the same sheet of music.
Then
So
we're good.
if I complete an application today, I would, 5 years from now, I would have to come to EPC
If
and
you haven't
request
done
an
the work.
extension.
yes,
It resumes to be normal. All permits issued between July 1st, 2011 and June 10th, 2021 are still valid and are still valid as of March 10th, 2020, have an automatic life of 14 years with the ability to request a 5-year extension. So they were pretty explicit.
There it is.
And that's, the catalyst behind that was COVID, do you think?
Yes,
Yeah. Wow.
but there had been a prior one that was based on
Approval.
the economy many years ago. Oh, that's
2000.
varied.
so, you were in high school then.
Keep going.
Okay, anybody else have anything on this?
No.
We just had to
Do we need to vote?
Yes.
Okay, Jim, can I have a motion to approve the transfer of EPC 2022-2016?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. It sounds like you just made the motion, but I will support you and make it as well. I make a motion to approve the applicant's request as proposed in EPC number 22-2016 with respect to 25 Salisbury Road.
And I second that motion.
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, what we're doing, this is the end of the special meeting, and we'll be opening public hearing momentarily. I'm gonna get a motion to adjourn the special meeting, and so, and then we'll open up the public hearing. So everybody understands the procedure here?
Yep.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn the special meeting? Jim?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that this Environmental Protection Commission meeting special meeting of May 17th, 2023 be closed.
And I second the motion to adjourn the special meeting of Wednesday, May 17th. And further make a motion to continue the public hearing associated with EPC 5-2023, 17 Nickerson Lane. And that would be a continuance of the March 29th, 2023 meeting,
Yeah, all in favor?
public hearing.
Great. Thank you. And now we will
You
open
may
up.
need a second for my motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Okay.
second that motion.
All in favor? Okay, thanks.
You wanna take like 5 minutes?
Yeah, let's take 5.
For the record, in 2008, I was getting married.
2008. Childhood married? You people from West Virginia?
Charleston.
Get us over there.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Don't know.
Yes, my nephew.
Don't know. I told Rick that he didn't have to introduce himself. To the music people. You know, just to wait till one. Because if I ever find anything out that they did drugs, you know, as a town, we have one. Because they don't get the
Yes, I'm friendly.
kids like to always get the
I don't use that much.
I know you
So I use it.
I know where you live, because I met you when the guy on the street was
Yeah, but that, yeah, Jane is my little, I love that area. Yeah, me too. Yeah, so I was Carol and Jane.
Are you guys, is everybody ready? Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, let's resume the public hearing. To remind everybody, this is EPC 5-2023, 17 Nickerson Lane. M. Ross and K. Ross to construct a new single-family dwelling, drive, walkways, terraces, water service, sanitary sewers, swimming pool, walls, and other related features in a special flood hazard area and proximate to Holly Pond and other areas of resource. The property lies along the south side of Nickerson Lane, approximately 800 feet west of Muirwater Lane, and is identified as map number 52, lot number 9. The zone is R1 and it is approximately 0.9799 acres. We are continuing the public hearing from the prior meeting. Rick, you want to introduce?
Sure. Just as a matter of housekeeping and reminding the members how we got to this point, is that the application was made its way to an agenda on February 1st, 2023, and it was accepted by the commission. The commission also made a determination to hold a public hearing on the matter based on a determination of the hearing being in the public interest, and that the proposed activities may have a significant adverse impact, or significant impact on wetlands and watercourses. The applicant was noticed of the acceptance and scheduling the public hearing on February 7th. Public hearing was scheduled for March 29th, 2023, in accordance with the regulations. All the appropriate notices, the fees, the postings had been accomplished. And on March 29th, 2023, that hearing was opened. And following extensive testimony and interaction with the development team and a number of interested parties, the commission determined to continue the public hearing to allow for the submission of additional information to address pertinent issues, including those raised in correspondence by myself on the behalf of the commission dated February 7th, 2023, Matthew Pop, a professional wetland scientist for Environmental Land Solutions, and peer reviewer on the behalf of the commission dated March 29, 2023. Joe Canis, Ty Bond, a peer reviewer on behalf of the commission for engineering and other related concerns dated March 23, 2023. And Julia Kenzerski, analyst, Department of Energy and the Environment dated March 28, 2023. And of particular interest and importance was information related to resource impact, flood resilience, including sea rise, and the availability of feasible and improvement alternatives. So notice of that those requirements were outlined and transmitted to the applicant in correspondence on April 6, 2023 by certified return receipt requested. Document was received and acknowledged by the applicant's representatives. And the revised hearing, or the continued hearing, was scheduled for May 17th, 2023. Again, notice was republished, and agenda summary was prepared based on new submittals that were provided to the EPC offices on or about May 2nd. Other information, so you have your packages that include additional information. And there has been other information that has been transmitted to you over the past several days in further of the review of this application. That additional information that should be duly noted for the record include the applicant's engineering response from Landtech dated, or was submitted on May 15, 2023. There was follow-up correspondence from Environmental Land Solutions dated 5/17/23. There had been follow-up correspondence from Julia Krasinski at the DEP dated 5/15/23. There has been follow-up correspondence from Joe Canis and Time Bond dated 5/17/2023. And there's been a correspondence from Amy Zapatakis on the behalf of several adjoining property owners dated 5/17/2023. I can turn it over to the development team, and they can tell you what changes they've made to the plans and as the means to address the concerns that had been outlined by the commission and all those who had spoken at the last public hearing and then the related correspondence that followed.
Okay, Brian?
Good
Please identify yourself.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. For the record, Kurt Lowenstein, professional engineer from Landtech. Our offices are in Westport, Connecticut. I'm joined, similar team to last time. Richard Nichols to my right from the architect team, Brian Carey from my office, our director of environmental, and then Mitch Ross, who's sitting in the rear there, is the property owner. It has been a little while since we've been before you, but I assure you we've been working very hard based on your comments that we received at the last hearing. We feel that we've made some substantial changes to provide additional buffer, specifically from the last application. I hope that the commission has a similar feeling to us. I think we're much closer to a happy medium between the development side and the commission side. Briefly, I'll take you through the major changes, the biggest being the reduction in the development footprint. We reduced the entire footprint of the development, meaning the impervious areas, pool and house, the most substantial coming from the house, roughly 10% reduction in the overall development window that we had previously, which allows us to have a much more substantial buffer between the development and the tidal wetlands. In the interim, we also went out and reflagged the tidal wetland line which is reflective of the plan here. There has been a small deviation over the years, as you can imagine, with tidal influence areas, erosion can happen. So that line is representative of that, but our new proposal does provide at the closest 21 feet of buffer between that, and as you move south, that buffer gets substantially larger. It's really just that pinch point that we had in the previous, but as you recall, that was, you know, within 10 feet or so. So we've more than doubled it from the previous. The other big change that you've probably seen is the landscape plan. We did retain a licensed landscape architect, J. Fain Associates. They prepared a landscape plan that further enhanced the buffer down there. Let me just flip to that page. And I'm going to let Brian Carey speak to the details of this, but in general, the area that we're adding as the buffer, or rather maintaining as a buffer, the intent there is to leave all the existing vegetation that's there and just provide enhanced plantings. There will be a small access around the lower edge of the site for the property owner for maintenance on the lower side of the pool and the house, and just provide you know, an ability to really enjoy the beautiful coast that this property enjoys. With that, I want to have Brian come up and speak to some of the landscaping.
Good evening. My name is Brian Carey. I'm a professional wetland scientist with Land Tech. So since our last meeting, we did one of the requests for the peer review by Environmental Land Solutions was to hire a landscape architect to design a mitigation planting plan for the property, which we did. We did preserve a lot of the existing design elements that we had from the last plan, which was basically trying to preserve the wooded buffer that exists there now. That still does remain. The idea is to go in there and enhance that. There's been some discussions about the development of invasive species plan, which we will do. Basically, the idea is to keep the existing wooded buffer and then supplement the plantings with a coastal meadow area, basically to the south of the site where it is adjacent to Holly Pond. There is some shrubs going in. You can see the plant list. It is more robust than what we had been providing before. But we do think coastal meadow is appropriate based on the proximity to Holly Pond, but it also preserving you know, the views of the site for the property owner, which is why people want to live by the coast. That being said, I will go through. I think you know, we have had some rigorous discussions back and forth with Environmental Land Solutions, responding to a lot of their questions. We did get a new memo today in response to everything we've submitted, in response to their last submission, staff's comments, and Time Bond's comments. But just to go through these real quick, most of them we have no issue. We take no exception. We have no problem incorporating them. One of the comments was to go in here and actually mark all of the trees, speciate them. We haven't had time to do that, but again, we're not touching anything in here. The idea is to remove invasives. There is some slash that is on the ground, which is just trees that have fallen over. The idea would be to plant in the area, remove the slash, and implement an invasive species plan. We have no problem going in there, updating the plans to mark the trees. The comment was that the revised plan should show any of the trees, all of the trees in there be marked and surveyed. We have no problem doing that. Question item 3 was just in response to flagging the tidal wetlands. We did that. They're in agreement with the new updated line. It's asking us to put, state on the record that the new updated line is updated. They're asking us to put a report into the record. That's not a problem, we can do that as well. I think it is verified on the plans. Their response 13 was talking about the size of the stockpile. A note should be put on the plans. Any of these things we have no problem with. Note should be put on the plan referencing the size of the stockpile and basically explaining that anything beyond the stockpile that it's not capable of holding, we remove off-site. Again, no problem with that. 19 was discussing footing drains. We don't propose any footing drains. We'll make a note of that on the plan. 20 was to discuss the Coltech galleries. This is where we have a little bit of difference opinion. Again, not a big deal. Their ELS's response was concerned about the discharge of the Coltechs. When and if they discharge that, they will put basically fresh water into the tidal area. It'll dilute the tidal water. It'll become a source of Phragmites. That it would be a minor thing. I professionally, my professional opinion is that there's a large dilution source out there with the tidal. It'd be very hard to get a large stand of Phragmites growing there in that type of situation. But if that is a concern of ELS and the commission, again, we can address that through a supplemental invasive species plan. I personally, my professional opinion is I don't think that will be an issue. 24 talks about the suitability of the landscape plan, and it refers down to 24C. They're talking about ELS's comment was that there's most of the plantings are around the foundation here, the mitigation plantings, which that's a valid point. It's going to be hard to regulate that. It becomes where's the buffer, where are the landscape plantings, basically up along the foundation. That's hard for the town to basically monitor. But again, we're putting in a large vegetated buffer area here where we have basically agreed to make it a no-mow area, coastal plain area, which in this area is a unique environment. A lot of this was a wooded area along the Holly Pond. Now it's most of the sites are grass, cool season grasses. We're putting a coastal warm season grass meadow in here. It will be a unique environment. I do think it will provide substantial benefit to birds and wildlife because that is a lacking environment in that area. But again, there's some discussion about the mitigation plantings that were planned. About swapping out certain things that are more deer resistant. I don't really have a problem there. Looking at some of the things that the landscape architect had spec, they're not. It's not going to be a deer buffet, but there probably is some things we can change. One of the things ELS has recommended was northern bayberry. I don't really see an issue changing that out. So again, we're in agreement with that. Physical 2032 talks about physical demarcation, about the boulder spacing on the plan. Again, I don't see that being a problem. They want to reduce the maximum from 25 to 10. Again, that's not a big problem. So we're in agreement with that. Hold on, I'm sorry. 35. Again, they're requesting a certified applicator be. We were saying that we would hire a certified applicator as part of an invasive mitigation plan, which is required by law. Anyone who's going to spray any type of regulated herbicides needs to have that application. They just made a note that the project environmental consultant should be retained to address and control any non-native invasive plant species, meaning we would oversee them. Yeah, that's not a problem. basically come up with an invasive species plan, management plan, which we would hope you would, we can make that a condition approval, that's not a problem. The only last thing, 42, we are in disagreement with this. It talks about, it's kind of a rewrite of the landscape plan. We said we've come up with a robust planting plan based on what's there now. Yes, we know that there is new development that we're proposing. This lot was previously developed with a house that had been removed. Although it wasn't the size of this house, it was previously developed. The existing lot, as it stands today, is improved with a lawn type of environment. We are proposing to remove that existing lawn and replace it with a coastal meadow and put enhanced vegetated buffer around Holly Pond as requested by the commission, as requested by ELS. They're asking for more buffer plantings to increase the buffer. And basically, my professional response to that is that there are no impacts to wetlands, direct impacts to wetlands as part of this proposal. Meaning there's no work being proposed in wetlands. All of the disturbance that is associated with this is within the upland. There's plenty of case law to show that without direct disturbance of wetlands, mitigation is not necessarily required. We are providing mitigation. I believe, in my professional opinion, we are providing substantial mitigation for the size of this proposal. There are no direct impacts to wetlands. I feel that, professionally, our mitigation plan is sufficient based on a lack of direct impacts to tidal wetlands, that this is mitigating any issues that would be created with the proposed development. So that's basically our response to the ELS report that we received today. There was one other comment I just want to address from Ty and Bond's report that we received today regarding the neighboring arborvitae trees, spruce trees in this area, talking about the setback to the flagstone patio. It goes to the actual concern is basically saying that based on the proposed design of the wall, that there's some concern that these trees would be impacted. Those trees out there right now are arborvitae and spruce. If you look at the USDA Forest Service northeastern area, tree species and their tolerance for construction stresses, basically arborvitae are known to have relative good tolerance for disturbance during construction process. No one can complete with 100% say if there's construction within a certain setback of a tree, how that tree's going to react. But again, arborvitaes are known to have good resilience to the construction. There are measures we can take that I'm sure we can implement as far as making sure that there's root pruning and other types of methods to preserve the trees. Again, these trees are ornamental in nature more than anything. They're not providing any necessary benefit to the wetland. Arborvitaes are, even though they're native, they're in this type of environment, it's more ornamental than anything. We would be willing to replace these if needed. The applicant actually is the one who planted these other trees and the trees here, so again, they're ornamental in nature. And we take measures to mitigate any disturbance during construction. I can answer any questions. We do want to submit into the record the design change that was requested as part of Ty and Bond's previous memos. I'll turn it back over to Kurt. I'll be here to answer any questions that may arise.
Thanks, Brian. Before we turn it over to Q&A, one other thing I wanted to address is really the kind of coastal flooding concern that was raised. I kind of saw the previous hearing as kind of twofold. There was the buffer as far as potential impacts to the wetlands, and then there was the flooding, the flood hazard zone concerns. Ty and Bond in their first comment letter and their follow-up letter raised a similar concern regarding the pool foundation, its proximity to the adjacent neighbor, and the potential impacts of wave displacement. Obviously, Holly Pond is not an area where you're seeing substantial wave action, as you would see if in an exposed area on the coast. This area is kind of isolated portion of Holly Pond. That being said, it does have an AE14 flood zone, which does have, some type of wave action that will be experienced during a 100-year flood event. The previous proposal, as you may recall, had I wouldn't say substantial, but substantially more than we're showing now, protrusion into that flood zone. The revised plan all but removes the pool area from the flood zone and reduces just the small corners of the house to be within the flood zone. In fact, numbers-wise, we're talking about, just bear with me a moment. Previous proposal had roughly 2,500 square feet of protrusion into the flood zone. The proposal in front of you here is around 900 square feet. So that's a substantial reduction in the potential impacts, if any. Like I said, in my professional opinion, I think any concerns here of wave displacement from significant wave action is minimal at best, which was why in our response we felt that it was a little belt and suspenders, so to speak, for doing a full coastal wave analysis. We've had conversations with Joe Canis from Ty and Bond regarding it, which kind of sparks the next, call it Plan B pool plan that we've put together for you this afternoon. I'm just going to pass it out to everyone and then I'll walk you through a little bit. Thank you. I'm just going to ask you guys.
Sure, thanks. Thank you.
So the highlighted section there is what we're proposing as, we'll call it the Plan B pool concept. My understanding, the crux of the concern is really this point here in the previous design. Obviously, it's a triangular shaped pool. It's certainly not your traditional shape. But being that this point is at closest roughly 25 feet from the adjacent neighbor's property where it interacts with the flood zone and the potential for any wave action, this is the point where you would have the biggest concern of displacement of the wave runoff. And with the new design, adding a more curved wall and eliminating that kind of focused protrusion at this point, the new proposal pulls back where it interacts with the flood zone. So really it's not until you're roughly halfway across the pool, besides the fact that the pool is going to be smaller in itself, where the flood zone would be interacting with that upper pool retaining wall, which will only be 4 feet in height. But that being said, now you've increased from 25 feet, now you're roughly 50 feet from the adjacent property line there. And again, like I said, in the current revised, I think the risk is minimal at best. With this Plan B pool, I think that all but eliminates the concern there. I mean, I know Joe is here this evening. He'll weigh in and see if he agrees with me on this. But I think that could be a good solution to the concern of the pool wall and the interaction with the any potential wave action. So with that, I will turn it over to any Q&A for me or Brian or Richard if there's any specifics on the architectural revisions.
Do we want to go to Matt and Joe?
Yeah.
You want to have questions first?
Do you want to go to any commission members?
I'd rather hear everybody talk first.
I think, I would agree. So let's get, Joe? Yeah. Michael, just for the record, you did review,
Correct, I did.
okay. To be very specific, you reviewed the last public hearing on 17 Nickerson Lane, so that you're fully up to speed.
Correct.
Okay. Sorry, Joe.
All right, no worries. Thank you for the record. Joseph Canis, I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. I'm also a certified floodplain manager by the Association of State Floodplain Managers. And we were retained by the town to review the stormwater floodplain and sediment erosion control aspects of the application. So I issued my first comments back in March of 2023. And the applicant recently responded to those comments, and I issued a memo actually today. And the applicant has addressed all the comments I had except for two, which they've addressed in testimony tonight. So my initial concern with the pool was, from the initial application, was that the proximity to the shoreline of Holly Pond. They've since moved that back, but my concern remained with the protrusion here, because that could almost act as a splitter island and direct, if you can imagine a wave coming 90 degrees from Holly Pond, it would go to the left, or there's an opportunity for it to go to the right. Now, the pool is located landward of the limit of moderate wave action, so these are smaller waves, less than 18 inches, so the risk is less, but I wasn't comfortable with the protrusion here. That's why I requested the coastal analysis. The revised, we'll call it the Plan B option, addresses that. It pulls the pool a little bit further away. It gets that point, the point where it comes closest to the shoreline. It pulls it further away from the neighboring property. So I'm more comfortable that there'll be no adverse impact to the adjoining property as a result of the wave action. The second comment had to do with the retaining wall along the property line. My concern was is that this retaining wall, the high side, is actually on the property to the southeast, right? So they're working on the low side. So in order to get that wall installed, they'll have to cut into that existing slope. And so my concern was, and I ran into this issue on another project, so I just wanted to make sure that that type of issue doesn't get repeated here. And one of the first things is, the wall can be engineered, different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, most commonly you'll see the precast segmental block, the small blocks that form these walls. Those require a geogrid that goes behind the wall. And that geogrid, my concern was the geogrid might need to extend onto the adjacent property because you need a certain length of geogrid. Alternatively, there's some other, they could use a jumbo block, which is a larger block that doesn't require the geogrid that goes back. That wall might encroach a little bit further into the driveway. Or it could be a cast-in-place wall with, instead of the stem going back onto the adjoining property, it would have to come forward. But again, these are all, structural design issues that I think can be engineered further in the design process. So I think there's a path forward for them to address that comment.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Appreciate it, Joe. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist, environmental land solutions in Norwalk. I'm here tonight because we reviewed the revised plan and prepared a letter. I think Land went through most of the points. I'm just going to maybe clarify some of them. Originally, I think I had, maybe 40-something comments. By then moving the house further back, it reduced about 75% of my comments. I have a few outstanding ones. The first one was requested a tree survey. But I think that the main point was we wanted to show which trees were there and which weren't. For instance, this tree right here, the big, right at the entrance, that's not there, nor is I think these two right here. So again, if the tree's not there, it's already been removed, I think that shouldn't be shown on the plan. It doesn't require a surveyor to go out there, just somebody to go out there and identify. And then the other one was the most significant tree on the site, right here, this right here, this large oak tree, it's not labeled. When you're out there and trying to figure out where you are, you're standing by the oak tree, you think it should be labeled, but it isn't. You have arrows pointing to it to say tree to be removed, but so again, mainly in this area, there's not a tree there that's taken off the plan. Maybe you redo the driveway because it looks like they're saving it, they're wrapping the driveway around that tree. So that was comment number one. Number three was the reflag the tidal wetlands. The line pretty much parallels the original line. It's a little bit different, maybe in this area of three here. But I think it's important that there's a report in the file that says who did it, when it was done. Just something brief so that in 5 years from now or so, someone's trying to figure out why there's two different wetland lines on the site. So just to say that the wetland line has been updated. Item 13 and 19 were just two notes to be placed on the plan. One was about the stockpiles, and the other one was about the footing, no footing drains. I think they agreed to that. Number 20 was the Phragmites comment. Again, that mainly wasn't concerned if there was going to be footing drains. I think that we're going to be discharging water quite often. There is Phragmites. They did say there's no Phragmites on Holly Pond, but right adjacent to the site, actually not this lot, but I think it's the next lot. There is a large stand of Phragmites right there. So again, this isn't a biggest concern as it originally had with the footing drains being discharged. So I think that even though there is Phragmites nearby, that's really not a large concern. Just when they do the invasive management plan, maybe they could add a note in there just to routinely check for that. I did, item 24, here's the landscape glare, we did review that, and we did have a number of comments. The mitigation plantings, kind of tough to see through here. And here's the plant list. But these plantings up around the house, the foundations, I don't know how you ever would be enforce that. And that usually foundation plantings are constantly changing, and so those probably shouldn't be part of the wetland buffer plan. I think the wetland buffer actually starts where the boulder row is, right through here. So the lawn area here and these plantings here are kind of outside of the wetland buffer, as I see. So again, the wetland buffer's only the natural area that's left between the kind of lawn area and the tidal wetlands. So again, those plants, I think they're, as far as permitting, are meaningless. They are removing 25 trees. We're only replacing 2 of the trees, and actually 2 of the trees are right in the foundation there, foundation beds. Again, I think I'm going to say this several times, the mitigation plan should include, you're taking down 25 trees or so, maybe even more than that. Should include replacing some of those trees. Should include shade trees, the larger growing trees, evergreen trees, such as hollies and cedars, especially on Holly Pond. Evergreen trees are great for wintering owls along the coast. So usually if I had a project like this, I probably would have a stand of American holly somewhere near, on the site. I think we want to have some notes on the plan how the tidal wetland buffer is going to be maintained. If there's a meadow area here, does that get cut, once a month, once a year? Probably should be cut, like the late winter months, once a year, and that's it. Item number 32 was the boulder row. Again, the spacing of the boulders pretty far apart. So usually you want the landscape contractor to be aware of them. You don't want them to ride a mower through them easily. So 25 feet uncentered, I think is too far apart. Should be more like 10 feet apart. There should be probably a note on the plan that says land waterward of the boulder road, how it should be maintained. Should be maintained in a natural state. No lawn areas. Right here in the mitigation plan, you have lawn right through here, beyond the boulder row. So I'm not sure how the lawn area becomes part of the wetland buffer. Even if it is a no-mow, mix, C-mix. No-mow C-mixes, they can get mowed every week, so, or once a year, or never. So I think too, if you put a no-mow mix and you show it as a lawn area here, that's getting mowed with the rest of the site routinely. Again, the invasive species plan, we just want to make sure that somebody like Land Tech is, reviews any measures, control measures before they're done. I don't think we want a certified applicator there determining what's invasive and what's not and what should be removed. The last comment is, the landscape buffer here, they call it robust. No, I don't think I would call it robust at all. Again, you're proposing, no shade trees, the larger growing trees, no understory trees, no evergreen trees. In this area right here, it's only 11 feet wide between the lawn area and the tidal wetland. So 11 feet is, in my opinion, not large enough for this project. What they could easily do is, instead of having all this lawn through here, all this lawn area back behind here could be removed, and maybe just have a footpath through here. And this boulder row could be moved further back to provide a larger buffer. The other thing that could be done is, I think it's reasonable to assume there's going to be a house on here, but amenity items such as like swimming pools and tennis courts, especially large swimming pools. This pool right here is, I would say, larger than, probably twice as large as a 20 by 40 pool. Even the revised swimming pool is quite a bit bigger than a 20 by 40 pool. That could be reduced or even removed from the development. The terrace right through here could be removed and pushed or reduced and pushed further back to provide that larger buffer area. Again, so amenity items, swimming pools, large swimming pools, I don't think that's a given on a slice like this. And I think that, there will be some, impact to Holly Pond. You have a lawn area, 11 feet from tidal wetlands areas. There's no woody plants, or no trees between this point, I think it's wetland flag 24 and 28, right through here. No screen there. Screening vegetation is great for wildlife, to screen wildlife from activities that would be happening in the rear yard. Holly Pond is known for having a species of special concern on there. There's egrets that are species of special concern. 2 weeks ago, there were 16 ibis just right about here along the pond. I don't know if those ibis would, once this house is built here, I don't think you would ever find them in this location. So Holly Pond's a special location, and I think it deserves a buffer that's robust. And this buffer, is not robust. So, I think. I think that is, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, man. Okay, I'll let it go around the commission members. I'm sorry?
Anybody else?
To speak? Well, I'm not gonna go to the public yet, I just want
No, I'm just saying.
the applicant, if the applicant would like to speak, no. Kurt? Brian?
We'll just save our comments, unless there's direct questions for us, we'll save our comments till after the public for a final rebuttal.
Okay. Let's go to, Bill, you wanna take this one?
I'm still taking this all in. I don't want to comment yet, I'm still.
Okay, fair enough. Michael?
Regarding Joe Canis's comments, I would agree with the Plan B pool. It is a very large pool by large pool standards. Regarding the retaining wall, I think the applicant should specify in the application the construction type. I think the practical application would be a poured-in-place concrete wall where the footing resides on the applicant's property. Those jumbo block or the T blocks rely heavily on those walls being successful with very good drainage and a lot of what's called geogrid. It's like Velcro to keep the stuff in place. And to rely on the neighbor for that isn't going to, I don't think that's going to be an option. I am, you know my feeling on boulders. I don't, personally, I'm not a fan of boulders, but there is a place for them. I would be, I think what might make a successful demarcation line would be to have plantings in between the boulders, so large deck mowers and such can't pass through if that's a concern. The outdoor patio and pool area is very handsome and expansive. There's certainly a lot of attention to that. I share an opinion that I don't think that the wetland mitigation plantings are material. I think there can be better quality of plantings. And I would like the planting, Rick, I'd like the planting plan to be exact and correct, because we're looking at different plans where you see the oak trees and the cherry trees, a 24-inch diameter tree on one plan, and not being represented on the design schematic plan that was passed out this evening. So my question is, are those mature trees going to reside in the front yard? And then just another note, I noticed looking at the new revised plan per the old plan, there's, let's see, compass direction. Well, alongside the pool, there are steps. There's 8 risers. So 8 risers, and just using logic, if the rise on each step is 7.5 inches times 8, that's a 5-foot elevation change. Did the elevation of the patio change? Because there are no steps on the other.
You can take that to be 6-inch risers.
Okay. Whichever.
The intent here is that you would have no more than 4 feet of grade differential from the
So is there a
terrace to
change?
the grades
So the
below.
question is I just noticed you had steps, which you didn't before. So is there a change in grade on this plan?
No. The pool deck in the, not the plan you're looking at there, well, same there. The elevation of the terrace area relative to the grade below is 4 feet now, just on 3.9 feet to be exact. So 6-inch risers, 8 of them would give you 4 feet, that would be your 4 feet of grade.
So there's no, okay, so one plan had stairs, the current revised plan has stairs, but the grade has not changed.
The grade has not changed, and that is
That's-
really just a concept plan as far as,
Okay.
you know, addressing some of the
If
concerns.
there's no change in grade, that's fine.
Correct.
Regarding the Phragmites conversation, I think the applicant said that even though they felt that the injection of fresh water would be de minimis, that they were willing to work a solution for that. So why don't we do that? And I think that's, makes good sense. And that's all I have.
Do you have any comments at this time?
I think it was Kurt that said it when he was first commenting 15 minutes ago, that with input from this commission and others and neighbors, and that they went back to the drawing board and reduced the home by 10%, that you spoke to.
Roundabouts, yes.
Well, the
Michael?
footprint was reduced 10%.
Correct.
Right, so the home was shrunk.
Correct, which included the removal, if you recall, in the original design, there was a 3-car garage. We removed an entire bay off of that in addition to shrinking the overall living space as well.
I personally think that's positive in your thinking through and revising on what is a small, tight little site I thank you for addressing those concerns raised earlier. I do agree with Commissioner Irvin that this pool is grand. As I look at it, it has a kind of a mild S-curve on the outer. And to me, in my eye, if I were trying to develop this property, I just wonder if I'd not have that point going out to sit right on the setback line from the mean high water line and just have a nice gracious curve come around. I don't know if that addressed Mr. Canis's wave action issues. I'm not a surfer and I don't really know much about waves. I like the direction you guys are going in. That's the short version.
And just to add, I looked at the application, that's a good point, I missed that one because I wanted to pay the compliment as well. As the coverage from the site, from the original plan was 17.9%, my iPad's dying, but I think it's 11, the total coverage now is 11.5%.
Percentage-wise, that's
That's
a big move.
meaningful number.
That's a meaningful number. So thank you. Those are my comments, Mr. Chairman. For the moment, I reserve the right to have more if we regather.
So I just want to understand, maybe it was you, but is your point that the building and the structure are outside our regulatory domain? Is that what I heard you say?
No, we're still within the upland review area associated with Holly Pond, which is 100 feet. So
Because-
portions of our development is within that 100%.
That's what I wanted to understand, because I thought I heard something different and I was going to mention the upland review area.
Gotcha. Perhaps when I was discussing the protrusion into the flood zone, we've all but removed that encroachment. That's where I was referencing, before we had roughly 2,500 square feet of development waterward of the flood zone, essentially in the flood zone. This newest design pulls it down to roughly 900, and then if we further implemented the Plan B pool with, some sort of modifications perhaps, that would further reduce that even more, because this point in the corner here would also be removed from the flood zone.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure we were all on the same page on that, because it's one thing to be within an upland review of a course or a stream or even a river, but this is Holly Pond, which is even, more critical. Have you given the comments about the wildlife, have you considered doing a wildlife inventory? Because the state statutes do talk about animals as something that needs to be considered. We've heard a lot in terms of animals, and has there been a formalized inventory process?
I'll let Brian.
So I have and I knew this issue would come up, so I printed out the case as Rick would know. It's Riverbend Associates versus Conservation Inland Commission of Simsbury. And being a former staff member of some towns and being on commissions and doing what I do now, I think there's sometimes a little confusion about the interplay between the protection of wetlands and wildlife, and how the environmental inland wetland agencies are supposed to react. So I just want to read this part, because
Please.
this is case law from the appellate court, and this has frustrated me at times, because it does provide a singular focus of the commission. And basically, the bottom line is, in this case, the plaintiffs claim that the trial court.
Could you tell us which court that was?
Yes, so this is the appellate court decision from 2000.
Okay.
2000 is actually argued in 2003, released in 2004. It's called Riverbend versus Conservation Inland Wetlands Commission of the Town of Simsbury, and I can leave this for you because this is quoted often in any. For whatever reason, there hasn't been a lot of new case law surrounding the inland wetlands decisions for quite some time. But not to get too pedantic here, basically says, the plaintiff claimed that the trial court, this is talking, court improperly concluded that the Inland Wetlands Commission of the Town of Wilton had jurisdiction to deny the plaintiff's inland wetlands permit application on the basis that the plaintiff's proposed non-wetland development activity adversely would affect the upland habitat of the spotted salamander, resulting in reduction of the biodiversity and wetlands and watercourses. In reversing the trial court's ruling, so this is appellate court, we concluded that a wetlands commission may regulate activities outside of the wetlands and watercourses and in upland revere areas only if those activities are likely to affect the land which comprises a wetland, the body of water that comprises a watercourse or channel and bank of an intermittent watercourse. We reason, and this is the court, we reason that the explicit language and the legislative history of the act made it clear that the legislature's intent was to protect the physical characteristics of wetlands and watercourses and not the wildlife, including wetland obligate species or biodiversity. Meaning that without making a direct correlation for impacts to wildlife, saying that if we were going to impact wildlife, that there would be some detrimental impact to wetlands. You can't use that as a consideration. Now, I have no problem going out there and doing a biological survey of the property, but without showing that there's some type of, if we were to impact some wildlife, that there was going to be a direct impact to wetlands by impacting them, the court has said that that's not germane to the issue. You know, there's another part in this which I've always relied on because I believe sometimes we get a little bit above our skis, and I've been guilty of this myself. It is apparent from the foregoing that local inland wetland bodies, meaning, you know, your commission, are not little environmental protection agencies. The commission's charge is very specific in, is there impacts to wetlands, and how, if so, how are those wetlands going to be mitigated?
So how do you square that with the state statute that talks about protection of wildlife?
So in a situation like this, unless it's not really germane to a wetland application according to the case law. You can ask for that information, that is clear. But and I can't say that you can ask me for whatever information you deem you need to ask for to draw a conclusion if there's impacts to wetlands and wildlife, and not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but to draw those conclusions is very hard.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to square some of the comments I've heard, public meeting and otherwise, last time, where people, I think someone mentioned a minx on the property,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to, you know, square.
And I'm not saying I necessarily agree with her, but that is, once the appellate court makes a decision, it becomes the law.
Okay, fair enough.
But I knew this issue comes up a lot, where people start talking about, you know, I saw a fox on the property, or I saw a deer on the
Yeah, you
property.
know,
and
fox, I'm not, we got a lot of fox around here, but I, you know, we heard some public comments, so that's why.
And I'm sensitive to that, it's just without direct impacts to wetlands.
Yep, okay, fair enough. No other questions?
That's a lot to take in. I mean, I was looking, you know, the packet that Jeremy gave us when we were appointed to this commission, and I went through it last night, and I was just trying to kind of get my head around what you were talking, in anticipation of this conversation also. And in it, I saw, and I quote, it says, "The EPC's purpose is the protection, preservation, and maintenance of our natural resources, the prevention of floods, and the protection of the inland wetlands and watercourses within or bordering the territorial limits of the town." And it defines wetlands. It says aquatic, plant, or animal life. And then it goes on to talk about habitat. So I don't really know how that, I'm like, my head is a little bit spinning, but I don't know how to square that with the court case that you just referenced. But I just wanted to throw that out there. I just wanted to clarify a couple things. The stakes that are on the property now, are those the original stakes, or are those the stakes that for the revised?
Those are the original. We did not do a revised staking.
Okay.
Our understanding was the original staking was requested because it was difficult to visualize
Right.
where this may sit on the site. So I apologize if that was a wish of the commission. That wasn't what the impression that I had gotten from the
Okay,
previous,
just wanted
but
to know.
that is the original staking that was done.
And this, I just want to clarify, this plan that you handed us this evening, that is, the coverage is 11.5% of the property, all.
This plan that was submitted on May 2nd, that plan will be 11.1%. You know, that's minus 200 square feet,
Because of the
250
change
square
in the
feet. Yeah,
pool.
the pool is slightly smaller there.
Okay. And you mentioned that, that the footprint has been reduced approximately 10%, or whatever
Mhm.
that works out to be. So last time I had asked about the size of the house, and you said, I had asked about the scale of the house, and you said the footprint was 5,500 feet, so that's now been reduced
To 4,900
to
square feet.
4,900, okay.
So technically 11%, but we'll call it 10 for round numbers.
But is that's the footprint, that's not the actual square footage of the home?
No, that's just if you were looking down on it on plan view, basically the gray shaded hatched
Right.
areas,
Yeah.
that represents the 4,900.
So just for my own edification, can you tell me what the square footage of the home is?
Roughly double that, but maybe,
No.
Richard, you wanna?
I think that number that you were listing may have been the full square footage, because I don't think, no, what was the?
Footprint's 4,900, so if you wanna come up. I'll tell you what, if we can get that number to you, but figure it's 2 stories, so you're gonna have roughly double, less the width of the walls, you know, those are 8 inches or so you're around about, you're probably just shy of 10,000 between the 2 floors, maybe a little bit less, you know, there's some kind of common areas in there.
I actually think it's significantly less than that, than 10.
Yeah.
No, like significantly less. I think the original plan, from my memory with the architect talk.
Sorry, please identify yourself.
Yeah, Mitch Ross, the hopefully soon-to-be homeowner. When I originally discussed it with the architect, I believe the total square footage of both floors was 7,900.
And that's the original?
That's the
before it was
original,
scaled
so
back.
if it got down 10%, so I would say now it's more like 7,300. But
Okay,
it's not, we built the other house has 10,000, so I know it's smaller
yeah,
than the other house.
okay,
Yeah, we don't have a second floor on the garage,
right,
which is there, stuff like that, I think that's what they're referring to.
right. And then my only other thing, I mean, I think almost every one of us has mentioned it, just, the removal of the trees and whether it's within our jurisdiction or not to care about the birds, and the wildlife. You had mentioned that you would be willing to plant additional trees, that you were willing to work with us to do that, and I was just wondering how you address that. I know that you've talked about the wetland buffers and the shrubbery that's been the foundation plantings, but, you know, shade trees, big trees, where are they?
So, the intent of the plan before you, and by no means are we trying to get away, obfuscate from the shade trees. The difficulty with providing large amounts of new shade trees here is this area essentially is entirely out because there's a deed restriction that doesn't require any planting over 6 feet of height.
Okay.
This section in here, there's actually a pretty dense set of existing trees that will remain. That happens to fall right in the view of the property. So it's in that area, it's a balancing act of, you know, we don't want to plant an entire screening essentially in there with large canopies. The northern section of the property is pretty densely wooded to begin with. We're not touching that at all. So really we're talking about is a small area in here, which I think we can certainly talk with our landscape architect and with Mitch and see if we can add some additional shade trees in there, but the opportunity to kind of enhance the main part of the buffer with shade trees is somewhat limited here. So we elected to go with a more low-lying shrub and meadow mix in this area, which in our opinion, as Brian stated, will be an enhancement to the buffer area here.
And you had one last question. You had talked about in the upper, I don't know what the direction of that is, but
So north is
that
this
north.
way.
Okay, the northern western portion, that's staying. But you
Correct.
mentioned you're going to have someone come in and evaluate for invasives and that sort of thing and remove some of those. What about, like, I noticed that there are like some snags in there, are those remaining as well, or?
Yeah, there was some discussion about, you know, evaluating the snags. I don't think that's an issue. Some of the trees are actually slashed, it's on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, or whatever they would call barber chair, where it's like it's split and still hanging.
But the ones that
So
are still standing?
So that would be, we would look at that. The one issue we're running up to is, just because there's been a lot of questions about the application and, you know, from the comments we received and the back and forth which happens, we received the comments today, so we're addressing them as quickly as we can. In order for us, and we agree with most of the comments, in order for us to update the plans, this is the last night of the hearing. So we you know, if you guys do, you know, we basically have to close the hearing tonight, so.
I'm not so sure that's the case, though. There was an extension that was granted.
There was an extension.
Mhm.
I mean, we can update the plans. We are hoping to close the hearing tonight and move this along. We can update and provide the required comments, you know, to basically put that back into the record. You know, a lot of these small minor details that we agreed to, I mean, that's not day or two's worth of work.
I think, and just to jump in here, it sounds like, because I was in here at the meeting and I had to watch the tape earlier this morning, that there was concern from the commissioners and the public regarding the quality of the wetland mitigation planting plan. And it sounds like that some of the commissioners have concern about the quality. We haven't finished. And maybe that would be a reason to extend the hearing, that the applicant have a prudent.
Let's see how far we go, okay, because, you know, it's one of those things that very clearly, my sense is also that there's some questioning there, but, and we still haven't heard from the public, okay, yet, and so, you know, it's a little after 10 o'clock and we still haven't heard from the public yet, so, and you know, that's always interesting, so, but I do want to go around through the commissioners here to make sure that, you're done?
Yeah.
Lauren?
Yeah,
Floor is yours.
I too am stuck on trees, and that conservation value, adding that back, the large trees. And I'm also stuck on the buffer that Matt explained to us. And, you know, he had indicated that, you know, there were some birds in the water, the ibis, and You know, if we didn't have, you know, that, if we had a little bit more, you know, buffer, it'd be more, maybe more likely that we would, you know, improve the effect on that. And I get your, you know, your references to the other case law. However, I have trails in my backyard, and, you know, a footpath or a trail and shrinking that buffer area, a footpath could be beautiful back there, as one option. And so, you know, that could potentially solve a lot of, some more of those issues as well. Because I do think that the 11 feet is still kind of on my mind as not a big enough buffer. So that's where I stand.
Okay. I think I'll open it up to the public then, if the public would like to.
If I could, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, sure.
If I could just add one more thing to the point of the buffer width.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a good point, we do have opportunity to, you know, in some, you know, some areas more than others, widen the buffer, shall we say, the area beyond the no-mow zone, or beyond the waterway or the boulder. If there is a particular number that the commission is looking, you know, say if we're providing 11 feet and you're looking for a minimum of 15 feet throughout, I mean, those are types of things that I think can be worked in as a condition, rather than kind of going back and forth, spending a whole month and then debating over species of plantings. We're open to suggestions on types of plantings specifically in the buffer, with input from ELS and from your commission certainly. I just feel we're kind of debating over like very fine details, which are not insignificant, but I think they can be handled in a good faith manner, rather than continue to extend the application for those kind of very small details. But, you know, obviously it's at your discretion. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you for that point. I just had one question, just maybe related to that. In the process of the last few weeks, have you or the other members of the development team been able to talk to, I forget her name, there's an attorney representing neighbors? Is that
Amy Sadovakis.
Amy, have you been in that dialogue just to kind of try to hone in on a point of equilibrium? Just a question.
No, not at this point, or up to this point with the neighbors. We've been in communication with the peer reviewers with our revision, but we haven't had any direct conversation with the neighbors.
Okay.
My understanding, the major concern of the neighbors is the size of the development in general, rather than the specifics of the type of buffering that's there.
That's fair. Okay. Yes?
Thank you.
We'll open up to the public now.
Hi, good evening. Amy Zapchakis, Rucci Law Group, on behalf of the neighbors, specifically the Van Dykes, owners of 19 Nickerson Lane, the Thorns, owners of 31 Outlook Drive, the Vinci's, owners of 10 Nickerson Lane, and the Wiggins, owners of 14 Nickerson Lane. So basically all of the surrounding neighbors, including the two directly abutting neighbors. As mentioned, yes, obviously the biggest concern is the size of the house. And a lot of that also has to do with the walls. And there has been some discussion this evening from the peer reviewers regarding the walls. And I think I think one of the things we need to remember is that this is a lot that floods. Unlike some other developments that we'll see in town and that I've worked on behalf of applicants, where a property may be in the flood zone, but it's not a property that typically sees flood waters, this area does flood. So we know that. And so this house is built up quite a bit with walls. We have walls around the pool. The pool design I know changed this evening. I haven't had a chance to really look at that. And we have these retaining walls right up against one of my client's properties. And there aren't any plans in the application for these walls. And I think that while that is going to end up being a planning and zoning conversation as well, I think it is something that needs to be considered by this commission, because we're talking about the flooding impacts and the stability of these walls and the impacts that that could have on the wetlands, particularly if they're not designed in a stable fashion. You know, again, the pool walls are in excess of 4 feet. There are foundation walls in excess of 6 feet. You know, we do appreciate that the house is smaller than the original design. We've gone from 10-foot walls to 6-foot walls, 10-foot foundation walls to 6-foot foundation walls. It's better, but that's still pretty massive. And I really do, I personally have concerns about the landscaping plan that's been developed, and I think it's been raised, but this question of trees, there's sort of this, there were statements made, and I'm not necessarily refuting them that, you know, well, there is a dense tree buffer here, but the trees to be retained and the trees to be removed are not clearly identified on these plans, and the trees that actually are there are not clearly identified on these plans. So it's very hard for the neighbors to really get a sense of, you know, is there going to be any buffering? We've got both buffering in terms of protecting the wetlands, protecting the wildlife, the incredible amount of bird life that we see in the area that, you know, the impacts on the wetlands, I understand we can't worry the case law about, you know, we can't legislate exactly protection of a species, but that's different than the construction impacting the wetlands, which the sign of which is the destruction of habitats for these species.
May I ask you a quick question there? The state of Connecticut has identified this legally, I assume, as a special. What's the term for this coastal area, Rick? The
It's in the Natural Diversity Database.
It's in the National Diversity Database. So, I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, the natural diversity, you know, if you could, you know.
I'll give you that.
Okay, so the coastline is in the National Diversity Database. Yet, we as a commission, by Riverbend, okay, can't consider that. I find this confusing for me, personally. Do you have any insight into this?
I'd be happy to prepare a legal memo on that. It was not something I was prepared for tonight.
Okay.
But I will say, I think one of the distinction I was trying to make is, you know, if you look at the town's regulations, the idea is one of the ways you see whether there's an impact on the wetlands is if it's going to impact the wildlife. So I think the distinction and is that you can't say, we're denying you because it's gonna kill the salamander, but we can say that, you know, your proposal is impacting the wetlands we need to protect these wetlands because of the fact that it is a habitat for this diverse database, of special species. That's I think the distinction that needs to be made here, because I don't think that this commission can't consider I mean, you're considering the coastal resources. That is your job in this type of application, and a major part of those coastal resources are the wildlife, the birds, and all of the other wildlife that we see, significant wildlife in this area that we see on this lot right now. You know, the two lots were merged at one point, and the whole thing was completely covered in trees. This particular lot had a very small portion of the old house on it. It straddled the property line. 10 Nickerson Lane was built, and I admit, you know, one of my clients lives there and they're very happy, but it was the same applicant that built that house. And now, if you look at it, I've submitted a photograph from 2008 with my letter that showed how many trees there were in this area, and how, if you go out there now, you can see how few there are. And, you know, we know better now, and we know what we need to do to sort of try to do a little more to protect those areas. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of.
I'm still debating what, you know, and I'll ask Rick later to dig, because they must have defined that at some point in time.
Right. And I need to look at it a little more myself, so I don't want to speak out of turn either.
Appreciate it.
So I think, and the one thing that I didn't hear that much of this evening that I know had been discussed at the first hearing, but I want to make sure is still considered by this commission, is we also need to think about impacts on the wetlands and on the coastal resources during construction. There's, as has been noted, there's very little room to move around, and this goes back to identifying what trees are on the property. This area, up in the northwestern section where there was commentary that, those trees are all going to be kept. Well, there's a very narrow opening between the tree line and where this house is proposed to be developed. So how are they going to get in? What's the construction phasing so that this can be done and actually protect the areas that they're saying they're going to be protected? I'm concerned about the fact that we're talking about a stockpile area that is designed to be the most that the property can hold. A stockpile area should be designed to be what is needed for the project. If the lot can't hold the project and the stockpile areas and the necessary, protections that are needed during construction, then the project is too big. We talked at the first meeting. There was some discussion of dewatering. We know that they're going to hit water when they build this foundation. I don't know that the small area that they've proposed down at the end of the property is sufficient to catch the water, and again, to make sure that just during construction we're not, draining a ton of fresh water into Holly Pond. I think that's a piece that I haven't really seen addressed by the applicant, and I think should be a concern of this commission as you move forward. Let me just check my notes from what I marked while they were speaking. The one last thing was, and again, this talks about the retaining wall. Those arborvitae may not provide any particular wetlands, resources. They are screening. They are proposing to build right up to my client's property line, and we need to think about the wetlands buffer plantings, and again, maybe this isn't as much for your commission as it is for planning and zoning, but their design of a wall that is potentially going to kill all the screening between the lots is also of concern. Thank you, unless there are any questions.
Commission members, any questions for Amy?
No.
I just have one quick question. So your client is in the adjoining lot?
Well, I represent, how many was it? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
So I represent the property owners here, the property owners here,
okay.
property owners here,
Yeah.
and then there's one more that it's technically Outlook Drive, but it's basically the property that looks.
No, I just wanted to confirm that where the arborvitae are, that is your client.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So that's a concern, a particular concern of this neighbor, more so
Okay.
obviously than the others.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to confirm. Thanks.
I did have a question. I think if I heard you correctly, you said we know they're gonna hit water, but I seem to remember at the prior meeting that wasn't necessarily substantiated. So I just want to ask, is that an estimate in your mind, or is that a statement of fact?
Well, it is a very wet lot, and they have to dig down quite a bit for their foundation, and they do have a dewatering plan. I think the applicant has acknowledged that they're likely to hit water during construction.
Peter, when they go to dig the foundation too, it's gonna fill up like a swimming pool, 100%, and they have trash pumps, and the excavator will be responsible for that. So it's actually a very good point that I forgot to think about, that Amy pointed out.
Say that again.
So a trash pump is just a big pump that'll take a bunch of gobbledygook through it and put it wherever you want the water to go.
A sump pump that's like, that can be 1.5 inches to, hose is 3/4 inch. That's just much larger. Think of it like a bilge pump for a boat or something like that.
So it moves hundreds of gallons of water per minute.
So you're saying that the pool would be dug first.
No, I'm saying when you dig a foundation, you're effectively creating a hole for a swimming pool.
Yes,
right?
yes, right.
So when it rains, that whole thing fills up and they wanna keep the footings dry, or the guy's gotta work in the hole. We can't do that with the water there, so now where does the water go? So I think, that's a very valid point that Peter brought up. And I, just as I'm talking now, Rick, I really think it's important that the planting plan is spot on, the development plan, the protection plan. Like, the applicant needs to get everything on the same sheet. We need to be brass tacked on the application and the site plans. I don't get the impression that we're there at all.
Okay. Sure.
But I just add a couple comments. You know, I think there has been progress, pretty substantial progress that's been made, but, you know, we've talked about a ton of things tonight, and there's been a new introduction of new plans and testimony, you know, and we'll do that. We'll do the invasive treatment plan, we'll design a wall. We changed the pool and the configuration of the pool, and we no longer think that's going to adversely impact the flood. We have, you know, we revitalized, they made a ton of progress in the last month.
No,
But
no one is
no,
debating that.
No.
I mean, they, you know, Kirk
No,
came up with a
absolutely.
10% worth, pulling back.
I
I don't see,
absolutely-
you know, Bill Wright hasn't gotten his oar out to measure. So.
But I absolutely agree with Michael. You should be, at some point, voting on one cohesive plan. And quite honestly, I've been sitting here for the last 2 hours taking notes. I wouldn't know where to start to look in writing say a resolution, if it were, you know, a resolution to say revised plans to do what. So there was a lot of things that were said. I mean,
No,
I think.
Yeah, I
we
think
should
you're right.
be
I
voting-
think,
We're gonna be voting, we should be voting on one thing, you
okay.
know, and
Does that, okay, can I, if I may conclude then, what I think we need is what Michael said, you know, because this is only part of the paper, okay, and this doesn't include all the electronic stuff of the new, to get a concise, you know, we just got Plan B tonight. And from my perspective, Plan B is certainly better than the previous submissions. So I think what we need is some more progress on the robust planting plan. Got that from Matt Pop. I thought that was an excellent point. I think that to understand what happens with the dewatering, to understand, to go the trees, I think I think a number of commission members identified the trees, etc., that are identified or not identified. And so, and what happens to them, so that the commission members understand when we discuss, we're discussing the same, the same set of plans, because I'm concerned that, you know, that Michael, who's probably smarter than all of us, has, you know, can isolate the last comments of this, but I can't, or I haven't, or whatever. So, I think that's what we need, Rick, at this point in time, because there's a lot of progress done, and before I was very, very concerned about this, considering the changes, Plan B pool, etc. There's, you know, the applicants to be complimented by the progress that they've made along this. You know, before I didn't, you know, I was just shaking my head. Now, you guys have done a lot of work, and I didn't want to know what you spent behind the scenes, you know, clashing and you know, like this. But I need a set of plans, okay? I need one saying, this is what it's going to be. I can take this, you know, recycle the paper, so then I have a planting plan. I have the trees identified, coming down, coming up, etc. This Plan B, which we got tonight, needs to be digested, okay? So, is that, Rick, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I just wanted, if you don't mind, I just wanted to get a couple things, to the record. So your professional engineer opinions with the changes with the alternate plan B for the pool, that it will not change the dynamics of the flood as to adversely impact resources or adjoining properties.
Yes.
Okay. And I think there's things that we could highlight is showing the trees and protecting them, the ones that have been pinpointed. Invasive control, we talked about the seasonal mows. The other thing is, has the selection of plantings, are they salt tolerant, the environment tolerant
Yes.
in their selection?
Jay Fain developed this plan with, the understanding that this area is in a coastal area that will experience periodic flooding.
Periodic flooding,
So
so
they will
that-
be salt tolerant.
Okay, increase, if there's, the opportunity, increase the deer resistance, we talked about a select introduction of trees or evergreens, and,
Strategically, where
Right,
they can be placed
strategically.
because of the restriction.
and you've got a restriction, and then of course you wanna maintain a few corridors, but also, so there could be a balance in here and we talked about the demarcation feature, that maybe bulking it up in some way, shape, or form, and either a combination of either boulders and plantings, that seems to be a
Boulders and
recommendation.
shade trees would be a good idea.
Yeah. Debris removal, wasn't there an accumulation of debris
In the
on the
area,
property that
there's some landscaping debris.
landscape debris?
Yep.
So that would be removed as part of the site, and should be duly noted, I think. And so all those plans that you have spoken of previously from the invasive, the last thing is like, well, not the last thing, but the wall. I mean, I suppose at this point, because we're going through the permitting process, and things will be detailed and designed by structural engineers, maybe calling out what the anticipated wall is going to be if it's a concern, and put it on the plan, so that we're moving forward, there's an indication of how we're going to achieve this. But all these things that have been outlined it can be put on one plan, so they're voting on, or one set of plans that they know exactly, and make sure all those things that they talked about are being adequately addressed.
If I could also add, for me, and I'm not sure I heard anyone say this, but the pinch point for me is really at the pool area, because I do look at the tidal wetlands line, and I see that smack up there, so
Yeah.
I would ask you to consider as a prudent and feasible alternative to not have a pool.
So that is the zoning setback line. And I just want to walk back one comment that was said before, that this lot floods. This lot, it is in the 80-14, and you can see the line. I mean, the building, there's a portion of the building that goes through the flood zone. The rest of it is in a zone X, which is not a flood zone.
Well, I was thinking of this line right here, the dotted line, which is.
That's the building setback line.
I see
So
the
that's the
title.
building setback line, which we're conforming,
yeah,
and then there's the title setback.
I got you.
So the
But I just
title line-
wanted, there was a
Yes.
comment made earlier that this lot floods, like it's like overwashed. No, that is not true. This corner of the building is being built to elevation, I believe, 17.5, which is FEMA compliant.
Okay.
You know, there's laws that are allowed to build in a flood zone if you're compliant with FEMA. This is, not only is this FEMA compliant, this is not in the flood zone. So the comment that this lot floods, it floods periodically into elevation 14, if that. This is being built compliant, rest of the property does not flood.
There's one thing that should be, just as a reminder. So we have, very coarse, first, wash kind of plans for the dwelling. The building itself, the dwelling, as with the pool and the walls, have to be constructed to meet the FEMA's and the local compliance. for flood protection.
Mhm.
So the basement, not the basement, the crawl space of this building will flood. It will be allowed to flood. And it can flood under the regulations, provided you meet certain parameters. So there'll be at grade on one full side. There'll be flood vents placed on 2 planes of the building. They have to be sized to account for what the fully enclosed space is. It has to have restrictions on uses. It has to be, they're elevating in a concrete wall up to elevation 16, which is 2 feet above the base flood. And then it starts to get framed above that. There could be no utilities down there, there could be no finished wall, ceiling, or floor materials, and those are things that we're just starting to work on. So, yeah, there's only a portion of the property subject to flooding. Recognize that you're probably, in the next, by 2050, you may have another 20 inches of flooding on the property, but we're working to build freeboard into the construction of the house.
So I need to understand then the expert testimony that the pool will be a pinch point in a flooding scenario.
So the pool, well, not just the pool, but if you go back to my letter from February 7th, and just based on their experience, is that, you know, when you see a V-zone or a limois zone, or the V-zone is where they say there's very, very turbulent wave action, it's a standard 3-foot wave, and so the limois has lesser, turbulence. And don't forget, it doesn't stop right there. There's always going to be some action. What you want to be, sure of in coastal situations is that as a result of working on the coast, on the shoreline, that you're not changing the dynamics of the flood to impact somebody else or to impact a resource.
Right.
So something as simple as, I can remember historically in Stanford, you had a lot that was 50 feet wide. It formerly had a 20-foot wide house on it. They built a 40-foot wide, or they wanted to build a 40-foot wide house. You know, the evaluation said, well, there's a possibility of restricting the water coming in or coming out at a higher velocity, cause erosion, cause a problem for everybody else. You want to be careful about that. More in where there's wave action, you want to make sure that it's not deflecting a wave onto somebody's property. So that's where they came in about the configuration of the pool.
Yep.
So you can design structures, for the most part, to withstand the flooding. But it's important to evaluate how the project affects the flooding as well.
Mhm.
So it's not just, it goes both ways.
But the pool is an amenity.
The pool
Okay,
is
so
an amenity.
no one debates that they can build a house here. That's just not, and that's just not a discussion. The question is, the pool is an amenity and, so we can, I mean, that's why the pool comes into play.
And
Okay,
it's
so-
removing the pool a prudent and feasible alternative.
Would a saltwater pool be a prudent and feasible alternative? Like, no, I don't know. I don't know. Would it?
I don't know. I'll leave that for the applicant to decide whether he considers that a prudent and feasible, but,
I think the importance is the encroachments.
Right.
And
Yes.
what the impact is.
and the construction, and the issues that they're gonna have during construction, to make sure, because this is a very sensitive, environment, and I think we're all particularly concerned about Holly Pond, remaining Holly Pond. So, okay, Rick, at this point in time, do we continue the public hearing? Do we have to vote to continue the public hearing, or no?
I would vote to continue the public hearing.
Sorry.
So can we just have it where it's an updated survey that where the surveyor actually says what the proposed location and building and the coverage? A site plan, which is the true site plan. Page 2 of the site plan would be the cross-section for any walls, any retaining walls, just because we want to know the construction of the walls. So that would be page 2 of the master site plan. Page 3 would be your construction layout, so where your stockpiles are going to be, where your wattles and all that stuff is going to go to protect your construction, your ingress and egress out of the site, where the tracking pad is, where your dewatering hole is going to be. if you stick that on top of the regular site plan, we're not gonna be able to read it.
Well, just to that point, if I may, I mean, you're talking about a means and methods thing, which is, we're really getting ahead of ourselves here. While I can understand that the commission is interested in that and it is a sensitive area, as far as dewatering goes, the filter bag that we provided is a standard product that is used all throughout the state of Connecticut.
We're not getting ahead of ourselves.
Having an entire means and methods detailed exactly how things are gonna happen, we are not the contractor and we cannot.
It is commonplace for an engineer to propose on his plan where he's gonna stick his track pad, the stockpiles,
Right, and we
and
have
any
provided-
erosion control.
We have provided all of those details.
Your plans currently do not line up. So I'm making it easy for everybody to provide the requisite work papers so we can approve your plan and you can move on.
Just so
Do
I.
you have an issue with that?
I don't have an issue with that. What you're requesting is already shown on the plan, that's what I'm confused about. And I'm not trying to be combative with you here, but you're requesting the standard soil erosion measures.
Just making sure everything lines up so we can see all your work product, that the survey, the proposed survey, the coverage matches what the engineer plan has, and anything else that correlates the construction, the concerns of the neighbors, the concerns that the commissioners have had, is all on the same piece of paper. Or actually on a separate piece of paper, but it's
consistent.
Right, it'll be included in the plan
All
set
we're
as
saying.
it has been. But what I'm getting at with the specifics of where will they place the well for the dewatering, as far as those types of details go, we can give you an outline construction sequence of how it will happen, but the means and methods of that is really down to how the contractor elects.
The engineer can specify on plan where he thinks he wants dewatering to occur.
Right, as we have.
It's on here.
It's on
Okay.
there. This is where we're showing.
Okay, so then there's no issue with that.
That's what I'm getting at.
I have no other comments.
Okay, listen, we're going to, I'm gonna request a motion that we continue this public hearing and with the consent of the commissioner. My friend, you wanna make a motion to continue?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for EPC number 5, 2023, with regards to 17 Nickerson Lane.
Second that?
All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Do I need a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yes. Motion to adjourn? Come on, man.
Urge that we make a motion,
Come
or
on,
I make a
come on, make it quick.
motion. I make the motion to adjourn this Environmental Protection Commission special meeting and public hearing on Wednesday, May 17, 2023.
Second that.
Second, all in favor? Done.